This is the regular board meeting of June 22nd, 2023. It is now 4:39 PM. We will begin roll call.
President Chavez,
Present.
Vice President Cortese,
Here.
Clerk Doe,
Here.
Member Herrera,
Here.
Member Lay.
Okay, are there any members? There's no members of the public who want to make a comment on a closed session agenda, right? No,
There are none.
there are none. Great. Okay, so then we will recess to closed session. Um, for the additional time. So we will start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Before we go into the opening of the meeting, want to take a moment of silence in honor of the passing one of our dear friends, Julio Pardo's wife. So we can just take a moment.
That was in honor of Joyce Marie Benitez Pardo.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, so welcome to the regular board meeting of June 22nd, 2023. Members of the public, please submit your comments as follows. Public comments may be made in person in the boardroom by filling out a speaker request form located at the entrance of the meeting room. They look like this. You may raise your virtual hand in Zoom to request to speak and offer comment in real time. You may also submit your public comment online by accessing the link to the agenda located on the district's homepage at www.esuhsd.org. Please reference the agenda item number in your written comment and limit your written comments to no more than 1,000 characters in length. Public comments submitted online will be read into the record. Please note, all meetings are recorded. All regular and special meetings of the Board of Trustees and board study sessions are streamed live on meeting nights and are also available for viewing the day after the meeting by accessing the district's YouTube channel listed on the district webpage at www.esuhsd.org under the quick link section. The board is not able to respond to items that are not on the agenda or any personnel issues. Your comments will be read into the record and will be directed to the superintendent and or the appropriate staff member for response. Interpretation of this meeting in Spanish and Vietnamese can be heard by accessing the link and following the instructions shown on the agenda or district's website. All right, so now we are going on to section 5. All right, so this is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any items to be removed from the agenda for consideration and or carried to future board meeting for consideration or action that the board would like to take on this agenda? Is there anything here? Okay. What item?
Thank you. 12.0. I'd like to pull item 12.02 and 12.03. Give us a little more time to understand and
Great. So,
at a later time. Thank you.
okay, so this is a second reading, so we'll move it to the next regular board meeting. So that's item 12.02, 12.03. Great. Anybody? Yeah, that's our next board meeting. Yes, yes.
I'm just asking for it to come back to another meeting because August, because we go into a break as of tomorrow. I'm not sure I would ask the administration to bring it back at a time that is,
So maybe the one after August.
I don't know, do we have to, as a board, say when to bring it back?
I don't think
just
so.
That we want to give the administration
We'll work
some
with,
questions and want to, and need some more understanding.
Okay,
Yeah, so,
okay,
Work with the board president on the timing of when to bring it back.
yeah.
I want the administration to have the opportunity to do it, because obviously the beginning of the school year
Mhm.
can be a little hectic for the administrations.
Yep. Okay, great.
thank you.
For future meetings. Yep. All right. So anything else on section 5.01? No, they're moving? Nope. Okay, great.
I neglected to add my voice to that. Because we should have, the action just taken to carry those two items.
Noted. Thank you for that. Okay, we are now going on to section 6, recognitions. Lee Henny, Student Governing Board Chairperson.
What's great about working in a school district is you get to meet a lot of people. And every once in a while you run into somebody and go, wow. This is an exceptional person. And during the last year, we've been able to experience the leadership, the sophistication, the smarts, the commitment of our student governing board representative, Lee Henny. I think I said this as the last meeting, I'm going to say it again. The level of focus and commitment and seeing things through and opening up town halls for students and getting on the Insta and getting more people there and staying focused on their areas of consent and wellness and thinking out just the issues of just kind of bathrooms and safety on our campuses and just staying on that to make sure that the student experience that they hear that students want, they're championing. And so, Lee, I just want to thank you for your leadership. It's great as Lee comes back with us next year as a member of the board. But we would all like to recognize you today for the efforts and your leadership and commitment to our students and our community this year. Truly phenomenal. And thank you. I assume some of you want to jump in with something and then we'll all come up and share our recognition, whatever's in the box.
Well, I have the opportunity to work and attend SGB meetings since I believe in January. And I observe Lee Henry is such a wonderful leaders, in the group, as well as you have a lot of good vision. And I'm really proud and commend you for all of your hard work. You put everything together and everything went so smoothly, and you don't have very caring moments, for, the group. And I'm really glad to get to know you. And we're gonna have to say goodbye to you. That's something that I don't want to hear, but we have to. But we'd love for you, and we probably will see you around the meeting. Thank you.
Well, actually, that's the good thing. We don't actually have to say goodbye to Lee. Lee is a junior this year and will continue on the student governing board as a senior, just in a different role. But I just want to echo superintendent's acknowledgement of your leadership and your organizational skills and the way you just brought that team together. It's created a very robust student governing board this year, and I thank you so much for that. And it's been a joy to work with you for many years now, and I'm glad that we get another year working together. Thank you for everything you've done for our students in the district and for this board. We've really appreciated the comments and what you brought forward to what we're up to here too.
And I also want to add my appreciation and my admiration. You have quite a presence, and when you speak, I hear some authority in what you say, like you know what you're talking about. You're in touch, with the conversation and so on. So I think the world is expecting great things from you moving forward. Thank you for serving on this, in this way.
I'm grateful for your thoughtful and your presence on this board. And I'm very grateful that we have one more year with you next year.
And I'll end with saying, I think for me, Manuel, the word that came up in terms of how she shows up is conviction. I could really tell and feel the conviction that you had, especially when certain topics would come up. And you have like an even kill like presence, but you can tell when you mean business. I was like, ooh, Lee means business right now. So I really appreciated those moments and just the dialogue and the questions that you provided. Sounds like there were robust conversations that happened during the student meetings. But I also want you to know that you also contributed to that in these spaces as well. And so we're grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you. So thank you so much for your service.
Oh, we have something for Lee, right?
Yeah, so should we? Okay, there you go.
So Lee, we'd like to present you with this in recognition of your leadership and commitment to the students and community of the East Side Union High School District. Thank you so much. Want to say something or keep it for your comments?
I mean, I actually have like.
Okay, we're gonna hold it to that.
What a lovely way to start our meeting. Okay, now we are on to section 7. Thank you. 7.01, Lee Henny, update.
First, I just like to thank all of you for your really kind comments. It means a lot. I also wanted to say that I've definitely learned a lot about, what we do here or you guys do as a board, as well as just how to, I don't know, speak in a room like this, because it's never easy, especially for someone my age. But I think all of you guys are exceptional role models to look up to. And I especially thank Patty, Lorena, and Bun for being the liaisons to SGB in the past, or at least when I've been here. Just really great role models, not only for me, but the entire group. And I really don't have any updates for SGB, but I just also wanted to commend that group for the great work that they've done this year and they've done in the past, and hope to continue that next year.
Thank you, Lee. All right. Now we are on to section 8.01. So superintendent or board members may request the items be considered, discussed, or acted out of order. As indicated on the agenda. Is there anything that we want to move?
The administration has no asks.
Okay, and I don't see any asks from my colleagues. So we will go right into 8.02. This is discussion and our action to approve and adopt proposed annual update on local control accountability plan. Ms. Marquez.
Good evening, Madam President, trustees, superintendent, and community. I am here again, Teresa Marquez, Associate Superintendent at Services. I am here once again as part of the LCAP process. As you are aware, on June 8th, I came forth as part of the process to bring to you the proposed plan for the 23-24 local control accountability plan as part of the requirement as a first hearing For this particular meeting, this is the meeting where the board is designated to take action. Just to recap, just as a brief summary, the key changes that were presented on June 8th include the following. For goal 1, action 15, it's an explicit noting of the 1.0 counseling SAC that has actually already been in existence for 1 year, just explicitly pulling it out as an action item. Another key change to the plan is goal 1, action 14, where we've added an existing coordinator, but shifted the role. And the new role is coordinator of parent and family engagement, and particularly with the focus on supporting our Vietnamese families. An additional change is under goal 2, which is the addition of the associate principal of tiered student supports at each of our high schools. For goal 3, we have added as part of action 4, 6.5 FTE bilingual para-educators to support the expansion of our ELD program across all our school sites. Under goal 4, which you have in front of you as part of the proposed plan, action 5 is the expansion of our 9th grade transition program, which pulls out teachers on special assignment to specifically work with a targeted group of 9th graders to support them in their transition from middle school to high school. Under that same goal 4, you'll see a new action item, which is the addition of 11 campus monitors to provide and support our positive, safe, and healthy school climates across our comprehensive high schools. And then finally, goal 5, action 2, which is the addition of health clerks to support the work of our overall health monitoring and well-being. We have in existence health clerks that are shared by sites. This action would place a health clerk, 1 full-time health clerk at each of our high schools. And so those are the major changes that I just want to bring to the attention of the board. And so the recommendation of the administration is that the board adopt and approve the plan as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Marquez. Do we have any in-person public? Well, we do have in-person public. So I think this is the part where we ask folks who fill this out to any comments. So the first one I have here is Jenny Davis, ACES president. Is this 5 minutes too? 5 minutes, ¿verdad? 5 minutes. I think you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President and members of the school board. My name is Jenny Davis, and I'm here tonight representing the Administrators Collaborative of Eastside, otherwise known as ACES. I want to thank you for the efforts the board has taken in the past month to engage with all stakeholders on the impact of the proposed LCAP we will have on our district. One thing that has become clear to me is there's a lack of understanding of what administrators do and why we feel so strongly about the board voting to approve the LCAP as it is written. It might help clear up some of this lack of understanding by explaining why we went into administration in the first place. I offer up my personal journey because I think it's fairly typical of most administrators in Eastside. I knew I wanted to become a teacher when I was 8 years old and truly never considered going into any other profession. I never had any aspirations of becoming a principal. I pictured myself staying in my classroom my entire career. I was the type of teacher who took on a lot of leadership roles. Department chair, 504 coordinator, WASP coordinator, to name a few. I got my admin credential on a whim through the cohort Eastside did with SJSU in 2004 to 2006. I was also a teacher who was guilty of frequently criticizing my admin for not doing more. I felt hampered in my role as a teacher leader and wanted to do more for our schools and our students, and decided it was time to use my admin credential in 2011. I have now been an administrator in Eastside for 12 years. I have been an APA, an APED, and now a principal. I have never regretted making the move to administration, and I genuinely love the work that I do, though in my heart, I'm still a teacher. In my years as site administrator, I have come to understand how much of the work we do on a daily basis is putting out fires and feeling like there is never enough time to do the critical work that needs to be done. We hear the calls from our ESTA and CSEA colleagues that they need more support from their administrators, and we want to give this support to our staff, teachers, and most of all, our students. Every administrator in Eastside feels the frustration of not being able to do more and seeing more and more students fall through the cracks. The data presented to you in the LCAP paints a dire picture. Our students need systematic Tier 1 interventions, and district-wide, 40% of our students need the more intensive and targeted support of Tiers 2 and 3. The LCAP strategy of adding an associate principal of tiered student supports would coordinate the supports, services, and tiered student interventions at each site. This position would be responsible for ensuring that our students are no longer slipping through the cracks. Throughout my career, I have chaired and been a part of a number of WASC visiting committees. Through this work, I have read a good number of other districts' LCAP plans. The plan you are voting on tonight is a remarkable document that doesn't just Band-Aid our problems. Our commitment to our community is higher and our aspirations are greater. The LCAP plan is grounded in building equitable communities through the implementation of multi-tiered systems of support. The LCAP goals are not only aligned to the expected California dashboard data indicators, but also the measures that will provide evidence to successful MTSS implementation. The LCAP is no one singular item. It is a strategic, comprehensive plan to respond as a system to the needs of our students, and in particular, the needs of our 3 target student populations: foster youth, English learners, and low-income students. The administrators are here tonight, most of them in spirit and a lot of them online, to tell you that we want to do more. We are educators and we know the work that needs to be done and we want to do it. The LCAP plan gives us the capacity to do more and meet the needs of the over 20,000 students in our district. ACES strongly encourages you to approve the district's LCAP plan. Thank you.
Ms. Davis. Next speaker, Julio Pardo. I believe Julio also has 5 minutes.
Julio Pardo, President, Classified Employees, Chapter 187. I want to point this paper out because when I went through the LCAP and I had heard what board had offered, I wanted to make sure, and so it took a while because I think I had to go to page 89 of 103 before I finally found it. So I have to let you know I'm very pleased with the fact that you are adding, it was recommended. I have to thank Ms. Marquez, I guess, because you're the person I see under name. So Ms. Marquez and her crew and the rest of the administration for, I guess, presenting it to you all and for you all hopefully approving it tonight. I really do believe that these extra health clerks will not only help the physical well-being of the students, but in doing so will help the rest of the staff that can now do the work they need to do, which will help with attendance, which will help with the emotional well-being of students and so on. I am a little concerned with the fact that it is the LCAP, because I know that if that goes away, a lot of positions can be eliminated. And based on what's happening tonight, it appears that there'll be approximately 20 classified positions that the district will be adding. That's a lot. And so obviously I'm very pleased with that also. One thing I would ask, I'm not, as I've said before, I'm not against getting another administrator because I see what has to be done out there. But I would hope that this person, whoever he is, whoever he or she is, gosh, I got myself in trouble, didn't I? Whoever they are will take advantage of the fact that there are a lot of other adults on this campus who are in offices who could go out and also help support students and help with the safety of the campus just by being out there, just walking around for half a period, taking turns and talking to those students that are out there for 10, 15 minutes would probably definitely help these students instead of waiting for them to come to them. So I thank the administration, I thank the board, and I would hope that you approve this LCAP proposal. My last item I'd like to speak on is, well, actually 2 items. I have to be honest, I have not had a chance to look at the budget for this year. I haven't had time. I may bring that up sometime in October if I see some things I'm not I'm a little concerned with. But at this point, I'm not going to speak anything up against it, except to say that I noticed that it says there's at the end for the next 3 years, of course, there's always what's now I guess called a reduction of expenditures or an ROE. which translates to an RIF, reduction in force, which translates to layoffs. That is what concerns me in the future. I'm hoping when 2024 ends that we won't have to do such a thing. And finally, I would like to thank the board and everyone for the honor you gave for my wife. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pardo. Do we have any online public comment?
Yes, we have online public comment.
Okay.
Public comment from Jennifer Black, staff member. I am an English teacher at Oak Grove. In a summary of the June 8th discussion about whether to include a fourth site administrator in the LCAP, I was disturbed to read the words, "The proposed fourth administrator, however, is not intended to reduce the current workload, but rather to create the systemic capacity to do more in support of our students and our LCAP goals. I understand that our LCAP must align with state designated LCAP goals, but the reference to doing more suggests a misunderstanding of our current conditions in education. Across the nation, educators from classified through administrative levels are dropping out of the field due to exhaustion and burnout. Not only can our system not do more, we can barely maintain our current capacity. I have watched our Oak Grove staff lose members throughout the past year, and the trend will continue if conditions don't change and we are all on the edge. The focus for the LCAP should not be expansion, but rather sustainability. That is the end of online public comment.
That is the end of public comment.
So no virtual hands? Okay. All right, any comments from my board colleagues? Questions?
So we're at the
Call a
point
motion.
of board deliberation and decision. Is
Yeah.
that where we are?
Yes.
For questions?
Yeah.
What would be helpful for me, Mr. Superintendent, is if you restated the case for the fourth administrator. You have a way of really getting to the essence of it, and also your sense of the issues, concerns raised in response to the
Sure.
proposed, and your response.
Sure, for sure.
to them.
So we look at this year's LCAP, but we also look at overtime. And over time, we have added positions through the LCAP, our parent community involvement specialists, social workers dealing with juvenile justice, adding more counselors, getting our counselors to be below the state average. Across our system, we are way below, much below the state average. We've added those positions in. We've added health clerks. We've added ninth grade specialists for helping students that are, we identified in eighth grade, they're going to need a little extra support in transitioning to high school and expanding that and putting that in. I believe it's over 100 positions that are included in the LCAP. And then we are adding some additional supports tonight. Part of the rationale for the fourth administrator is to be able to really zero in and make sure that those investments that we have made in our system are directed and targeted to the students that need them most. The second thing is that when we look at our student data, we can see that when we looked at our own, let's call it referral data, that we see those multi-tiered systems. We see a similar pyramid. We've looked at this in past meetings where over 96% of our population has 0 to 1 referral throughout the course of a whole year. There's another group across our system that get about 2 to 5. And that numbers is in a couple hundreds. And then there's even a smaller number of those students that really get 6 or more referrals that really need targeted support. So we have these investments across our system, not just in the LCAP, but from general fund, from grants, from Title I funding. We have different supports within our system, but we need that coordination. We need that targeted emphasis. We have the tools with Illuminate and Shape to look at that. We have the ability with this additional person to work with counselors, to work with social workers, to work with care teams, and make sure that we can find success for all of our students with targeted actions, targeted student groups, and targeted outlined actions that are very well expressed within the LCAP. Additionally, this also allows our principals to be those educational leaders that are directing the staff that has this person to direct that targeted work, but also allow for APDs and APAs to also target issues such as attendance at a greater level, getting more kids in, more for success, but also for that ADA that we'd also care about. The data tells us that our students need more targeted supports. And the data tells us that we have put in supports, but we need to target them. And we need someone that will be held accountable for them. That is why we're adding this additional position. Not to do nothing else, but more. And more in a way that's not just more anything, but for targeted student groups. In suggesting this position culturally in our district, that a word, the administrator word, can sometimes set people off. And I realized that when I became a principal and said, hey, you're going to the dark side. And I said, oh no, I'm Vader now. Okay, I'll stay Vander. No, Vader. And so I get that. And so I get that when anytime you invest more in the accountability piece or the leadership piece, that we can look across our system and see 200 things we would want to also add. And any person in their position could go, hey, I'm struggling with this. And so that's what we listen for. That's what we're listening for all the time. That's what successful leaders and educators do. They listen to the voices of saying, here's what I'd like to do. This is where I'm struggling in getting it done. Or here's where I'd like to see happen and I don't know how to make it happen. That's why your LCAP isn't just these 4 items. That's why your LCAP is 200 pages long, because for years we've been listening and responding in a way to get positive outcomes for our staff and students and community. So as I listened in this to the feedback this year, I heard very clear concerns from our community. I heard, hey, case management, there's an issue there with our students with IEP. And is there enough time with some of the more involved or complex IEPs? What can we do about that? And the response is, let's talk that out. I heard some concern around one person used the word incentives, but I think really what that was about student discipline and consequences and safety. And I'm like, yes, that's why you see the campus monitors in there. To Julio Pardo's point, that's also the work of all of us, including those new health clerks, those 9th grade transition specialists, directly related to those kids, but also that associate principal of multi-tiered systems of support is there to go into our data and find those kids, figure out how can we engage with them differently. And to admin teams, let me look you in the eye. I'm going to go to the little green light here. We expect a higher level of engagement with administration and students and those that work with students in a targeted manner by investing in this position. I'm going to go back to Julio. Sorry, I just keep throwing you flowers, but it's just like, yeah, we need to be outside. We need to not be walking past kids, but engaging with them. We need to look at trends over time with Illuminate and focus our actions towards that. So let me recap what I heard. I heard caseloads for case management, issues of safety. We heard some talk about career technical education, which we have in our system, but also the need that, hey, maybe there's students that want more of that. We can engage around that. We have a whole separate set of funds, not LCAP, for career technical education that we can look at. But as part of that conversation, we also heard, hey, what can we do more problem and project-based classrooms that feel more like that in all of our classrooms, not just CTE pathways? How can we make our curriculum more accessible to students, right? So that's another thing that I heard in this process. And so our commitment is to do what we will do: listen, engage, and partner for solutions. Not all of our problems or interests or concerns are ever going to be solved through the LCAP. It's just too small a portion of our budget. It is targeted for 3 groups of students. And we know that there's intersectionality and overlap. So we know that this does address issues of students with IEPs. We know this addresses other student groups. Absolutely. But our job in this process is to listen, what can we resolve and address to the LCAP? And where do we have to continue to dialogue, be critical of our budget, look for new outcomes or new means to get the outcomes we want.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, that recap about the LCAP. No.
Nicely done. That was very poetic.
Okay. I want to say where I'm going to be on this issue when we vote. But before that, I want to give a context for how I've been holding, processing, understanding this issue. I consider this to be one of the an issue of such magnitude that in 33 years on the board, there have been only a few times when we've hit on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most consequential, the most, challenging and so on. This is a 10 for me, may not be for others. And the way this issue of a proposed fourth administrator has played out this year is going to be, for me, a case study for how we can more effectively and with utmost integrity engage with one another, especially when it comes to issues like this where there's pretty substantial disagreement. I see these types of issues, including this one, as an opportunity to dive deep, to understand more, to even learn from hearing yourself, speaking with others and in their listening and in a group context. And for this type of dialogue and this type of deliberation, for me, the elected leaders for our key stakeholder groups are the first point of engagement for the board and the administration. And then given sufficient time, ideally it can be expanded to engagement with more of the rank and file. Again, on an issue of this nature, to me, there's a fundamental difference between receiving public comments and, on the one hand, and engaging in deep dialogue on the other. What I understand is that there was ample opportunity over a period of several months to offer comments to the administration on the proposed LCAT. But I'm not aware of opportunities, any substantial opportunities to be in a roundtable dialogue at the table, engaging in a spirit of dialogue and collaboration to delve more deeply into every aspect of this proposal to add a fourth administrator to all school sites. Part of what I've experienced in my career with coming to the table and being in dialogue is that it gets more nuanced, it gets more insightful. There's a point, there's a counterpoint. The language gets more precise. And ultimately, in my experience, there's a group wisdom that emerges that is quite different qualitatively than the beginning positions and beginning ways of articulating that people have on an issue. And I'm always seeking that group wisdom. It's just inherently there when you engage. And again, I'm not aware that such a dialogue and learning process occurred in any significant manner over the course of the school year. This is a context for me. What we ended up with in my experience, I may have missed something. What we ended up in my experience was a closed to the public study session involving 2 board members with key stakeholders who met on May 26th, days before the end of the school year. And this was followed by an open study session open to the public on June the 2nd, involving all board members at the table with key stakeholders, but only for an hour on a Friday evening. Both of these meetings, I believe, were well-intentioned, but for me, They lacked the necessary design, preparation, and facilitation needed for navigating an issue of this nature, the fourth administrator. I believe our board president really made a valiant, good faith effort to meet the moment in the face of logistical challenges and other complexities, around this issue. And I really thank you for that, Madam President. Regrettably, in my estimation, it was too little, too late. And as a consequence, what I'm witnessing, although you don't feel the energy in this room, but I certainly feel it in the field. As a consequence, what I'm witnessing, sadly, is that key stakeholders, particularly our ESTA leadership, is experiencing what in their understanding is a travesty of a process with regards to this fourth administrative proposal. So egregious in their experience as to rupture what was previously a spirit of partnership and trust. Where I am with everyone and everything begins with my regard for everyone. I believe in the East Side Union High School District, in our East Side community. I believe in Superintendent Vanderzee, and I believe in Associate Superintendent Marquez. And I hold in great esteem our ESTA leadership, our CSEA leadership, our ACES leadership, and other key stakeholders in our community. I have no doubt about everyone's care for our kids and our families. And yet there's a palpable distrust that is now here that wasn't here before this issue came to a head. And my determination is that this year and how this issue unfolded is going to be a case study and to be used not only to better understand and to repair and renew all of our relationships, but I'm committed to seeing a fundamental shift in the culture of our organization that allowed the process to unfold as it did on an issue like the fourth administrator proposal. This is what's true for me. I get that it's not true for others or not necessarily all others. My decision on this matter, just as I was getting ready to leave the house to come to this board meeting, I saw an email from one of our teachers. It was lengthy, substantive, passionate, advocating for the fourth administrator. Very articulate, very insightful. This teacher knows what she's talking about in advocating for the fourth administrator. On my own due diligence, with my own due diligence and a lot of hours of study and of keeping an open mind and following multiple lines of inquiry that arose for me, I have come to a decision which for me is a matter of conscience to support adding a fourth administrator to our school site teams. I see this not only as necessary, but vital for the sake of our kids. For me, this is no longer about choosing between adults. Rather, it's about how am I going to be in integrity with our kids. I'm literally believing that the lives of many of our kids will be touched and changed for the better as a result of this investment in an associate administrator for tiered supports at each of our school sites. If I didn't believe this, I would not be supporting it. Somehow we as adults stumbled all over with each other, but at the end of the day, the cost of our adult missteps cannot be borne by our kids by denying the addition of a fourth administrator. I some know just how deeply this issue has affected me in all of its context. It has been intense for me, but I will be voting for the LCAP as it is, and believe that there will be lives changed, lives of our kids changed in the months and years to follow because we did this. And that's essentially where I'm at. So thank you.
Thank you, trustee Herrera. Any other comments or questions?
I like a few, if I may. First of all, before I ask my questions, I just want to express how touched I am with what my colleague trustee Herrera has said. I absolutely agree with you that there is now a distrust that is palpable that have not existed before. And I am sad. There are few things in my life that I've done I'm so proud of, as much as I've been on this board. I'm a product of Eastside Union High School District. My father's first real job was a classified employee at Eastside Union High School District. The life of my family have changed because I am a product of Eastside Union. I remember things from my high school days as we discuss these issues that I'd like to share as we discuss these issues. So yes, I agree with my colleagues that there are missteps by adults. We could do far better jobs in collaborating and have real discussions, not just a study session and debate. We didn't need to just debate whether we should have a study session or not, given the magnitude of these decisions. This isn't just about $2.45 million a year. It's far greater. There are decisions about how we can do a better jobs. And I will, if Superintendent Venezzi will allow me to share some of our private discussions, our one-on-one in the past. That's 1 year as we discuss this very same issues. I think. So if I may, that's okay with you.
If they were private, let's keep them like that, but go ahead and take your learnings, sir.
I'll keep them, I'll keep them, they're not that private because we are discussing public issues and we care deeply about these issues. Last year's when this issue is coming up, I asked one key questions. What is the return on investment? Because I want to know what our students are going to get at a fundamental level. When we make a changes to the system, we want to know what our student will get. And we want that in a qualitative and quantitative, both what they get. What I received last year is incredibly passionate plea for it, and same as I this year, even more so, but they're mostly qualitative. What I also want to share was that if Mr. Venezzi, remember, I suggest perhaps we should consider a limited scope, which means 3, 4 AP additional for admin, and see how that progress, see what return we can get. So we want to do that. I also discussed the possibility repeatedly about how do we have higher accountability and provide incentive. Those are the exact word I remember using, so that some of our admin absolutely high performing and they're doing amazing jobs. I know because I walk with many of you. I remember some principal that I'm incredibly proud. I mean, when I walk home after meeting you, I said, that's the kind of principal we want in our district. That's the kind of AP we want. And some principal in AP need a little more work. So I was looking for a way, how do we incentivize so that our admin can perform more meaningful work, being high level productivity. I also explore with you about how do we reshift some of the workload, whether it's IEP meetings, caseload. I remember, so what I'm saying is, I may will differ with my colleague Herrera vote, but it's not because I don't respect your work or that I don't watch what you do or I don't care what you do. I care enormously what you do because I know what your work affect the future of our students the way it was possibly for my brother and I. But I also know there is not a guarantee, despite as I respect work, there won't be a slip in the crack. What I'm worried about is how do we move forward and provide not only today, but in the futures. Because I remember vaguely, if I remember last year, our LCAP was about $20 million. Am I approximately? Is that about right? We look at $31 million. What's going to happen when the amount of the LCAP is different? Our LCFF funding is different. Are we still going to fund all these positions? Once we make a commitment to hire and add a fourth admin, I sure hope we continue to support and continue to make that investment. If we're going to make an investment, we have to be willing to make sure that investment paid off for our students. What is unsure I am today, because and the next item on our agenda, 8.03, when Dr. Hunter and our CBO will present, is what we presented last month, was I'm unsure the backdrop of our investment. We know for absolute certainty that the state of California has less money to provide for our students. We know that because last year, they have a surplus of $97.5 billion. This year, as of stand today, the May revised, the state of California would only have $31.5 billion deficit spending. So as much as sanguine as my colleague has said, we could just advocate more. We should advocate more. But the reality is, if the state of California doesn't have the money, it may not be able to give our district what we need to do to serve our students. And a greater issue is our IPO. I know IPO have nothing to do with education because have nothing to do with our LCAP, but the reality is about 15% what it was the previous years. An IPO, initial public offering, affect how our fund will be funded because it will affect the real estate values. All these little things that happen outside the world should not matter, but it does. The reality is it does. So when we make decision as a board, for me and this one board member, I evaluate the first thing is what is the return investment? I don't mean dollar and cents when I talk about return investment. I talk what are our students going to get? It's got to be better than what it was before because we're going to spend more money. We're going to have better because if we don't, we basically just give somebody a raise. So when we look at return investment, the second thing I look at is how does that compare with all the investment we can make? How does that compare? I evaluate, we add campus monitor, we ask custodians, how does that affect the quality of our students? And all that affect our spending. So as much as I worry about the missteps of our adult, we should change, we got to be improved. And what I worry about is the future of our students, whether not just today, but tomorrow. Because as much as I remember one of my colleagues, don't do respect to my colleague, I absolutely respect them. Let's be very clear about that. Even when I disagree with them. It's not about how well we'll advocate with the state of California. It's the reality is where the money is going to be coming from. And we got to have that reserve. Our reserve at $94 million, if I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Hunter. If I remember correct, it's $94 million is probably, if not the highest in the history of Eastside Union High School District. But most of that funding is one time, come from COVID, from the pandemics for recovery. And I don't know the future is what the economy is going to be, but it's likely to be a mixed result based on what we've seen so far. We might be looking at recessions, and the state of California may have a lot less money. Federal governments, given the settlement between our presidents and the Republicans, we are likely to see potential that we may have reduction in the federal government, and that's indications that our Dr. Huntun have said a number of times. Additionally, we are looking at reductions in the number of our students, decline in enrollment. And this is not because of our fault, because the reality is there are more people moving outside of California than coming here. Most school districts, most county in the state of California will have less, and they will have less students. Well, what does less student means? Less students, one of the things going to happen is because we have less budgets, that means we probably hire less employees. So as Superintendent Venezia said earlier about the over 100, I think it's 104. In our last, in the study session, he said 104 employees that we have hired. The reality is less students mean we're going to have less employees and less teachers. So as much as Mr. Venezia in the last meeting, he said, we're not saying we're going to cut people. And I know that that's the diplomatic polite, but it's not Mr. Venezia or myself or any one of us saying there's going to be reductions. But the budget is saying that. That documents that you are looking at right here and that forecast making. Now, none of us know what the one-time money is going to save us. None of us know what that amount is, but we got to be very careful with the money to make sure that our reserve money will carry us through to the future recessions. So And maybe you think that we have always had that problem been solved. But looking back at the history of East Side Union, there have been many, many times where we're just on the brink. Just like at Stockton, I don't mean to pick any school districts or Oakland's or Stockton. I really don't. But I don't want to be in a position where we have to worry about how we're gonna have enough paper to print or we have enough supply for our teachers. I don't want to be in that. I don't want us to be so where it's not just about this distrust, but about different departments fighting for get that share the percentage. So I will vote no on this issue, not because I don't care about you or don't respect your work. I do. In fact, some of you in this room know I have absolutely enormous respect for you and the work that you do and how challenging. And I am worried about the fire that Principal Davis and President of ACES have said earlier about. I don't want the job of our admins about putting out fire. That does not make sense. It's about redistributing the workload and redistributing, because frankly, you don't want to hire three of the best and the brightest and the hardest working and the relatively speaking, not the highest, but certainly speaking, high paying, to become essentially security officer, putting out fire. That's not what we intended. So in this 1 year that I didn't sit here and just suddenly come up voting no today. It's come with the decisions that, and it weigh heavy on me. So here's a group of people that I have enormous respect, and I know they work really hard, but at the same time, the emissions have yet to come up to say, this is the return we're going to get. And it cannot be that we hope. And I quote, it cannot be because we hope we're going to make improvement. It is because we believe this is where we're going to make the improvement. And this is the improvement you can count on. Measure us on that. That is what we want. That's what I'm asking for this one board member, because we have to change the way we can't just be board members when someone presents to us. As much we respect and like Mr. Van der Zies and his staff and all of them. I don't mean just Mr. Teresa, but also Mr. Tom Nguyen and Dr. Huntoon. We have to ask the questions. Compare what we get there versus what all the investment options that we have. And these are investments. When we're talking about $31 million of the public fund, it is an investment. And I want to be very careful. So my challenge to administrations is what my challenge to Mr. Van der Zee a year ago. Go above and beyond the qualitative about talking about target. Show us the return on investment for our students. Show us how this is going to impact should the funding change next year and the year after that. We know what we have to do. You and I, everyone in this room, that 3-4 years from now, that reserve money will mostly be disappear. And we have to take cuts. Before I ask you to take cut, I want today to be very careful about our funding. As for that reasons, I will vote no this year on the LCAP. And I want you to understand that whatever I said about the process, I hope Mr. Van der Zee and his team, where they have challenged, rise up their challenge and challenge me as well as my colleagues to be more supportive. If you think I haven't understand something, help me understand that. Most of you have, well, I think all of you have my email address, and most of you have my cell phone. Call me. I'm happy to meet with you. I would be happy to meet with those who disagree with me because you think that I don't understand something. So the next year I can be more supportive. Because if they stand as the way it is, I will continue to vote no on the LCAP, not because I disagree with the work, but because I think it's necessary for the board, the administration, to rise to this level of challenge that I think is expected from all of us.
Mr. Doe. Trustee Cortese or Lei or Lee? Anybody?
First of all, I want to ask the question, I think I already asked Superintendent about the budget for LCAP presentation in May 18, different than the one that on June 8. I think we have roughly about $10 million more. Could you help me understand that? And also, I want to know that you mentioned to me about those carryover
Right.
fund. And I really want to know what type of position or what type of program that will be carry over for the LCAP. So answer for me first, and I'm gonna go to my,
So the
Uh,
difference in the calculation in terms of the $25 million and the roughly $30 million is just that. It's carryover or unspent funds from previous LCAP. Within an LCAP plan, along with the data that we have to put in the quantifiable piece that's within that plan, there is also a section where we have to reconcile what we budgeted and what we actually spent, and then how we're adjusting that. So in every LCAP, we have to account for what our allocation is for next year, and also will carry over into next year. So that's the difference. That's the difference in the number. And every year there can be differences to why it went unspent. It could be that we had a position and we did not have applicants for it. It could be that we had a position at the start of the year and then that person took a different position, so it remained open for a while. Sometimes city and county programs, if we're working with probation or other entities, might change their service model where they might have been co-funding a position and now they're not. So sometimes we incur more expenses, or sometimes that position goes away. So within every LCAP, you can look into it and look to see exactly, okay, what did we budget for? What did we actually expend? And then in creating the next year plan, we have to be transparent about that. We actually have to tell, this is why we did not spend it. It's in the plan. And then we have to account for those dollars in coming years. That's tricky because you're absolutely right that if you invest in the carryover along with the allocation, you go, well, wait a minute, if we spend every dollar this year, what are we going to do next year? And so that's part of the calculation and why Ed Services works with business services to make sure that we're being able to manage our funds, to be able to provide the programmatic supports we want, but also to make it doable over time.
and also, so those carryover will be just only a year, or could they, let's say that if we could not use all of the funds for 23, 24, then we'll carry again from one year to another?
Yeah, so we have to budget it for next year. So let's say when we're adding these ninth grade specialists at more of the schools, and that we find people that are credentialed don't have an interest in being in a more self-contained setting and working with these individuals, and we can't find people to fill all of those positions. We've budgeted for it, but if they go unfilled, then those dollars we're able to we have to plan for in the subsequent LCAP plan.
All right, thanks for your clarification. All right, first I want to say thank you to all stakeholders who spoke about LCAP plan, especially in fourth administrator. I know that we have received many emails from different stakeholders. I know that I have some doubt about this fourth administrator position, but after the meeting, so study sessions, add on, so we can understand more for the LCAP as well as especially for the fourth administrator. I want to give a benefit of the doubt that the fourth administrator position will support a student at risk, ESL, foster youth, homeless, McKinney Vento. That's something I'm really care for. I know that we have a lot of debate as well as different stakeholders, will go up for or against it. But I really want to focus, how can we support those students? And if I approve the LCAP plan with the fourth administrator position, I want to have the report at the end of the year that how many students did we have? How many students that we have intervened? How many students fall in the crack that we have been provide the best service because that fourth administrator? Because I overheard that, oh, the fourth administrator will take some part of the job of the other three administrator. I don't like to hear that. It's very skeptical because we never really thought about it. The fourth administrator as the job description is still going to be something that we look forward for the fourth administrator to do a job that all board member as well as stakeholder really count on. So I want to have the report the end of year really have to be most efficient. If not, then the next year, I'm gonna have to vote no. Because I don't think it's works and it's our money spending for the budget, looking for the other 40 years. And we might have some deficit and we're gonna have to cut. But I want to get to the bottom line that the administrator position, it does not work. We're gonna have to cut first. Because we cannot look into one other way, how can we support without the administrator? And any other type of service on other position, could they support our student without the budget that we have and if we have a deficit? And I really want to get to the bottom line that I'm really looking forward to see the group of the student did not will stay on the middle between the high and the low achievement. Because with the high achievement, probably we spend less time to support them because they're really top already. But for the low achievement, yes, we can spend more time, understand and support them. But still on the group in between these two groups, are we going to do something? Because if we don't, then they're gonna fall back to the low achievement, or they're gonna looking to how can we support them. So I really want to put that in the content for the full administrator also, not knowing that what is the outcome, but for me, I was kind of concerned when I make the decision to vote yes. And I really like to all stakeholders to hear that I'm the one that really want to follow the process. I know that LCAP is really the plan that support our student. And I want to give that the benefit of the doubt for that full administrator. So I want the administrator as well as staff to continue to work closely, engage and hearing all stakeholders, especially work collaboratively with ESTA for next year LCAP plan, because we need all hands on the deck to support our student. I'm really think that, because we're fighting one way, the other, just one subject, but I understand the other side. And I understand that how can we work together? I mean, we can be perfect. We cannot always agree with each other, but it is our process. We need to work collaboratively. And I want to see that, the value of the full administrator really is a strong support for all of the students that really need help. That's why I give a benefit of the doubt. So I will vote, approve the LCAP plan with the full administrator because I care for the student that really need help. And I'm looking forward to see the report for next year. That's all I have. Thank you.
I have a question before. I just want to. When you said the next year based on the performance, what metric would you use or what number would you say that makes sense for you that was success or lack thereof? How would you make that determinations?
I'm wondering if we can hear from the rest of the board and then get into these follow-up things, because I also have a comment on the same.
I'm open to that. Yeah, I'm very comfortable with however my colleague.
Cortese?
Yeah.
Actually, would it be possible? I think I
Wait.
was probably supposed to go before anyone else since my vote doesn't actually count. So it's like largely just to inform on the student opinion. With that said, I just wanted to restate that it is student opinion that I should be representing, so not really my own. Largely the opinion that I've collected is against the fourth admin position. Although it is kind of just anecdotal because I wasn't able to actually do a poll or SGB wasn't able to. But I just wanted to touch on what Herrera and Doe mentioned about the palpable distrust between teachers and ESTA and how that wasn't really resolved. And I just wanted to say that I think you both said that the distrust wasn't there before this or not in the same way. But from what I have seen this year, talking to staff, talking to teachers, talking to students, the distrust was definitely there. And I fear that making a decision like this when the issue hasn't been resolved would just further that. I also want to speak to what Leigh was saying about giving the position the benefit of the doubt. I also wanted to say that although we could look at the data next year on how many students that helped, even if that is kind of difficult to measure, we wouldn't know how many students could have been more helped with that money being used towards counselors or more teachers or anything different. So it would have to be, at the end of the day, kind of a leap of faith. And with what Brian was saying about the economic climate that could be potentially coming in the next couple of years, now may not be the best time to take that kind of leap of faith. Some of the students that I was able to speak to have 504s and IEPs, so they would probably better be able to speak on it because they would be a little bit more impacted by a new admin or LCAP, because they are those students who need the help and are being targeted. And they were also largely against it, talking about how something like more counselors would help, especially with student stress levels, student mental health, and how counselors can really help with things like that, and that there aren't enough currently to really focus on students, and just the general energy of there's not enough. And so to broaden our horizons to focus on more may not be the most helpful. And I do also want to reiterate that I deeply respect Ms. Marquez and the work that she has done this year. You know, I've listened to so many presentations of hers this year, and I know that she truly cares. So no disrespect to LCAP, the LCAP plan as a whole, or the rest of the projects that you have worked on this year, but I would vote no because of those reasons, because largely the issue hasn't been resolved, and we should really be taking into consideration what teachers are thinking, because, you know, from a student perspective, 95% of the time students are working with teachers. They are basically the only people we see on campus. And so if they're so strongly against something, if we can trust that the teachers care about their students and want us to do well, we should trust that they have a valid reason, which, you know, I've heard a lot of different ones. You know, teacher class sizes should be reduced. There should be more teachers instead of more admin. There needs to be more counselors, or there just needs to be attention on students in a way that only people in the classroom can do. So not that an admin could do. So yeah, I just wanted to, you know, I know some of you already said your final vote, but I just wanted to strongly urge you to consider teacher opinions as well as student opinions, since at the end of the day, those are the people that we're trying to help with this plan.
Thank you, Leigh. Cortese?
Lee, thank you for that. You know, my orientation around our, you know, commitment to equity is the path that brought me to the board. I worked for over 20 years in youth mentoring programs in this district, and worked with students that if we had Illuminate in those days, they would have all been on it. And so to me, this LCAP is all about addressing the needs of those students, the students for whom school isn't entirely working right now. And was the process to get here a little messy? I agree that it was. And you know, I'm not even sure that I was a little conflicted about it too. And I really appreciate my colleague's comment about, can we use this as a case study to learn and grow as a team? And I'm committed to doing that because, you know, as our student trustee was mentioning, there's some work to do there around trust. There were trust issues before, there's trust issues now, there's some work to do. With relationship, there's always work to do, and we can always strive to do better. And I just want to be very clear that I'm supporting this LCAP because to me, to have something in front of us that is screaming, literally red, these students need help, and not to provide it is immoral. And that's why I'll be supporting that. And I want my ESTA colleagues to know that this is not a vote against teachers. This is a vote against, a vote in support of providing students whatever it is that they need so that they can succeed. And we have work to do to continue to grow and learn together. And we can do that. We're adults. We can disagree and find ways to work together and to build bridges and to keep the conversation alive. Because I'm committed, I'm clear that all of our leaders really want what's best for our students, and we have different ideas about how to get there. So let's just use that as an anchor, like our commitment to what we want for students as an anchor in our relationships and work path going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm gonna try not to speak forever. I feel like a lot of my colleagues really mentioned on some key points and a few touched my heart. So thank you for sharing. I also really appreciate the different lenses and approaches to the decision. I think it's really important for us to have different considerations as we make really informed decisions. When I think about what my thoughts are about the LCAP as a whole, I think about our children and why we're here. And that's why oftentimes you'll hear me talk about the kids, because for me at a baseline, when I think about all the adults in the system, regardless of what role we play, we're on a team working to support our kids, right? And so that's why I'll be talking mainly about our children and how my position is going to be in that lens. And I want to acknowledge all the multiple opinions, really value everybody's voice, so important. And there's so many, at different layers, just getting all the messages in different forms and engagements was really powerful to see the different points of view. And I do also want to reiterate, similar to what my colleagues have said, we have a lot of work to do as the adults, but I do have belief in our group that we can figure this out and we can move this forward. We just got to continue talking to each other. And so I'll leave that there. For me, this plan really addresses different needs, both literally those that were put in front of us with voices, whether it was verbal or in writing, but also the data, right? And for me, one of my commitments is to make sure that all the voices are at the table ongoing. And so that means that for me, I take very seriously my responsibility to look at what the data is telling us, to look at what our needs are. And I fundamentally believe that one of our most important, if not one of our most important responsibilities, is to make sure that we really support our children, every child, with the best education possible. And as an educator, it is important that we differentiate. We are very blessed to have a really strong instructional team that really has set some frameworks in place, some programs in place, some amazing people in place to do the work. And it is clear that there is still a need for capacity. I think it was alluded or literally said by someone earlier that there's a number of investments happening and they're kind of scattered all over. But if we don't have someone to really thoughtfully say, this is what I'm going to focus on, then how are we supposed to leverage what is in place, right, for our kids that need it the most. And when I think about the actual role of the associate principal of multi-tier systems of support, they have a very clear charge that is focused on the whole child, that is focused on differentiating for every one of our kids based on where they are. And I think it is our responsibility to make sure that all of our kids across the board have access to that. You know, I'm not going to go too much into my story of where I got to where I am today, but I'm one of five that got lucky. And I am committed to setting up structures so that we don't have families that are literally broken up like this because they got lucky. All of our kids are going to have access because we have structures in place. We have programs in place. We have people ready to go to support them at all the layers possible. In this role specifically, yes, we'll have an impact on our kids, but really we'll also be supporting a lot of our educators that are in front of our kids day in and day out to build their practices. And that is an important craft to keep on practicing and getting better and honing in on ongoing. And so that is the lens that I am taking as I think about our action here tonight. And with that said,
Follow-up.
yes, some follow-up. I think Herrera and Doe had some.
Mr. Doe, may I go first? Because you
Go
actually
ahead.
spoke up first. I just want to comment to my colleague, trustee Lay, that you're supporting this with a clear eye that there has to be some discernible results, and the next year, your support is not necessarily going to be there depending. And I can understand that. And what I want to say is that my experience with organizational systems is that it takes well over a year to even just get something, put into position in the system. In the next few weeks, if this is indeed adopted tonight, the general description of what this administrator would do needs to be converted and go through all the processes of human resources department of job descriptions and posting and waiting for applications and interviewing, site by site and, identifying people, getting them oriented, starting to integrate them into the system as it currently is. It's quite a thing to just do the startup phase. You're not going to measure the actual potential results that are there in the first year, and in my mind, minimum is 3. I would say 3 to 5 in systems terms. But no, 1 year is not a measurement of what's authentically possible with an initiative. That's just my opinion. That's not gospel.
Yes, I heard you. I know that to expect for the first year, at least we know how many students in each school that we can support. We can intervene whichever way. I know that it's going to take time for human resource to find or to post it, to hire the full administrator. But we're going to have a report. We can evaluate it. We're going to evaluate it like the performance evaluation from the superintendent to other administrators, right? But we're going to have to make a process. We have to make a progress because we can't say, okay, because the first year, whatever the reason, we're going to have a data and we're going to have to move it forward. But if we're going to say the same thing next year, we come back, oh, we still have that same percentage of the student that we couldn't help, we couldn't intervene for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Then my question is, really, do we need to have the full administrator, or we need some teacher to go down to that classroom to really help, or we need some more counselor? We're going to find out what is the cause, what is the root. We're going to go down there. And if, well, the data show that, yes, we did make progress, but we still need, or whatever the reason, some more time or whatever, I like to hear them back. Because I'm looking to, yes, people say, oh yeah, you throw money out the door and you don't care. No, we do care. We do care when we look into the budget. How can we help the student? At the meantime that we want to balance the budget, we want to help the budget who stay in there. We're gonna have to evaluate it, and we want to make sure that the program or the administrator is the good way to help our student. It could be cost whatever other type of avenue. Like I said, we can look into other avenue. And if we could not find the other avenue, then we have to go back and take a look at the data. My point is, if we don't have a data, we can go back and say, oh, yeah, oh, we've been helping, 50% of the student, but they still fall in the cracks. And we're gonna have to find the root. Why do we help? We have the administrator. We heard from all stakeholders. Some stakeholder did not want to support. Some stakeholder really want to support. So we're gonna have to go back and take a look at that. That's just what I'm gonna evaluate it. Okay, I mean, no perfect solution, but I want to hear and I want to have the report, and the data are gonna have to show. That's how I'm gonna answer this.
Okay, Doe.
I'm just on that particular point, what would the data look like to you? How is it presented? Is it the overall improvement? Because overall, let's say next year, as more and more students coming back, they're more familiar. So we have a higher, sorry, a lower number of students who roam around campus. Does that satisfy you? Or does it have to be specifically for the performance of Fort Admin? And how would you measure that? And maybe the second portion of that question should be for our superintendent and education. But if we are measuring our performance, then we have to have a metrics that,
Yeah.
You got to measure what matters.
Data.
The data, and in
Yes.
what format would that look like, right? And with all respect to my colleagues, but I will get to the clear charge. But if you don't have a clear assignment, the actual duties of this for admin, how then would you then say, well, you didn't perform? Because if you didn't provide that description that said you got to do A, B, and C, and then we go say, sorry, you didn't perform well, we're gonna let you go. That is also unfair to those who we just hire. So in looking for the balance is you have to define that job descriptions, define what that role, and define what that performance is. And the reason why I said no, it's not because I don't want it, because we have a lot of options while we're spending our investment. There's a trade-off and opportunity costs. And Lee, that's brilliant what Lee said earlier, even though she didn't use the same word, but exactly what she said. It's about all the different students and all the students are looking at all the different things they have, whether it's counselors or health clerks or campus monitor or any other options we have. It's about how do you measure it? And what have not delivered by administrations is how do you gonna measure the performance so that we can then say, fantastic, you deliver what you said you would, or no, you didn't. And that is the challenge. I would encourage, as you make this vote, Trustee Lay, is that before you make that vote, the admission's got to provide that information for you to make that measurement. Are you comfortable with that? Which is why last year, I encouraged the administration to consider the options of hiring 3 or 4, see how that progress before we make a huge commit for 11. And I asked for incentive, which is another way of saying pay people better. By the way, in case in case those listening, that's exactly, it's about paying our administrator better. I certainly did that when I voted for the top, the top administrator, because I'm hoping that translates not only to the top, but across the board. So rather than hiring more bodies that we ensure our performance, because we haven't defined what that performance is, pay up to the market rate.
Thank you.
Trustee Doe,
That's my personal thought from
yeah,
last year.
yeah, I know, and I'm appreciating it. The point that I wanted to make is that in establishing metrics and a framework for evaluation and so on, I really don't believe that it's conclusive in anything less than 3 years of instituting it, refining it, anchoring it and so on. But you can have measurements for the first year and the second year and the third year. And it's, for me, it's not only objective data, it's subjective data as well, anecdotal, what have you, in terms of, what's in the field there of people's experience, and it's all just to inform. We're not flying blind. We're actually tracking or having some sense of whether it's having any impact at all. And so, but it gets stronger, into the third year. It starts to get much clearer. What is the trend? What is the nature?
First of all, I have no doubt that when you hire an additional admin, you're talking about what, 11 people at $2.45 million. You do the math, right? You can see the salary. These are, I would anticipate, highly qualified, highly competent folks. And I think there's some progress. I would expect some progress. I would be surprised if there isn't. The issue isn't whether there's progress, but whether that progress is matching compared to all the investment that we can make, alternative options, right? Because what a dollar spent here is a dollar you cannot spend somewhere else, right? And a dollar spent investment here, let's be honest about it. The rule of thumb that we remember is for every $2 million, that's a 1% salary raise or deduction, depending how you want to look at that math. Half the glass half full, half empty. Of every $2 million spent is the equivalent of 1%, right? So I'm very cognizant, because the reality is every one of our employees have to have a live, they have a roof over their head, they have to put food on the table. So all these things, as I'm calculating it. So again, my challenge to the administration is show us the data. Honestly, that's what everybody's talking about, but show us the metrics, so that we can look at it and say, fantastic, you did a fabulous jobs, or no, we have other alternative investment. Given the fact the backdrop is there's going to be less money next year, and there's going to be less money the year after that. And there is, as much as we know at this moment, we believe it's likely to be less money on the third year in terms of budget for the district.
So that's what I want to expect from the superintendent as staff, to take a look of that 4 administrator position, as well as put the metrics plan and all of those requirement, whatever you feel that. But like I said, I'm looking forward to have the report, and we can continue to have a dialogue. And main thing is what I want to give a benefit of the doubt of this for administrator, because I do want to see the support of this for the student. And I want to see, the improvement, right? Then that's what I mentioned. If we have different way to look into, the performance evaluation, the metrics, but the bottom line, how many students that we've been helping, how many students that's still going to be in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but we still have not touched. We're going to evaluate the outcome, the result. But no, without the result, I cannot go back here and argue, but I'm going to give a benefit of the doubt. That's how I want to see. And I want to expect the administrators as well as the superintendent to show the way that how you're going to hold accountable to the 4 administrator. And then as well as all administrator too, because we all know that we're going to work, and we want to have the performance evaluation, and we want to evaluate the outcome, the result. If it did not work this way, or did not work this program, then we're going to have to think which other program might not work for this time or might not work next year. And we're going to have to evaluate it, and we make a decision then. That's how I want to say.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay.
One more comment for our
You
student
can-
representative, and that is, my experience is that on first, look at this issue of the 4th administrator, you can almost predict what's going to be the initial response. And which you just reported to us was they're opposed to it. They're about counselors. They're about, direct, what others have said, direct services actually to our kids, smaller class sizes, all the kind of obvious things that you would choose over another administrator. my experiences, and I have like a lot of certainty that if I were to engage with the students you talk to in one or two conversations of an hour or more each, my guess that half of them or more would shift their position as they understood the implications of what this judgment call is all about. And I feel really certain about that. So I'm just saying what you heard, I understand. And that's what we hear initially until we start to drop deeper and start to hear other perspectives and start to understand the nature of each of the points being made. So I just wanted to comment then.
Great. Okay, so now I'd like to call the vote on this item. You have one
Move
more?
for approval of the LCAP.
Do you? Okay, go ahead, Lee.
Actually, a lot of the students that I talked to didn't really know enough to have a real opinion. The students that I talked to that would be more affected when we're talking about MTSS and like the tiers that would have to be in a tier that would require more support were strongly against it and already kind of had an understanding just because they have these 504s and IEPs that require them to have more help, that require them to have more knowledge. I did want to ask Ms. Marquez if you could provide in as specific detail as possible what the fourth admin position would be doing on a day by day, and also what our current admin position would do day by day, just for something to compare to. Because I think a lot of the issues that I've heard is that there's not enough specificity, or that what we're trying to target is just too vague.
Yes, thank you, Lee, for that question. So on page 50 of the LCAP plan is the detail of that particular position, but specifically our associate principal of student tiered supports. I just want to clarify that it's actually not MTSS. It's very targeted student tiered supports. Is going to focus on the use of our Illuminate report, which is our 6-week data report or warning system that they would use to identify students that need interventions. Working and coordinating the staff, right? Obviously, we recognize that this 1% isn't the panacea for the outcomes that we're looking to have, right? I've mentioned this before, the LCAP is intended as an integrated approach, just like you wouldn't pull goal 1, action 1 and the counselors and say, the counselors, this is the specific impact in terms of data, because we're a high school district, right? And we're looking at some summative data points such as graduation rates, A through G rates. Those are met, or those data points are an accumulation of a variety of different factors that went into that because we are such a large system. But more specifically, what this particular position would do is they would coordinate the work of the added positions that we have within the LCAP. So specifically work with our social workers, work with the parent community involvement specialist, work with our 9th grade transition teachers. So work with those positions that are in place to be able to provide supports in the various domains, which include academics, social emotional, and behavior. I talked about the intentional use of that 6-week data report in Illuminate. They collaborate with our existing multi-tiered system of support, teacher on special assignment. One of the key components of multi-tiered systems of support is that universal access to high quality instruction and interventions, as well as supports for social, emotional, and mental health. And so coordinating things like school-wide lessons that would happen consistently across all of our school sites on specified topics that have been determined by that team. In addition, they would prioritize and look at the standards for the teaching profession that we've done some work already with our system with many of our different groups to identify those target standards that they would then support teachers, right? And so on a day-to-day, I envisioned this particular associate principal being able to coordinate these different groups, but also be working with teachers based on the needs that they have to support. If there's a teacher that needs support in classroom management, being able to do that, and being able to do that in partnership with the principal and partnership with the associate principals who already as part of their duty do that. But when you have a staff that is so large, is being able to actually do it intentionally and focused on the specific needs of the teachers. And then also be able to look at what are those, like, who are the identified students? Where are they? right? And what are the supports that they need and how do I support the teachers in being able to deliver those? Part of the report that we found in working with our principals, and Mr. Vanders, can also speak to this, is that there's a number of students who are in that early alert, right? They have 1D, and that's why they're on the system, right? And looking at it through the lens of, hey, how do you bring in that group of students, have a conversation with the group of students and say, hey, the Eastside Spartan Promise is one course, one grade away for you. You have that D. What do you need to do to get that to a C so that now you are eligible for that Spartan Eastside Promise? And I could see this associate principal of tier student support doing that in coordination with the counselors, where this person, they are able to pull out that data, pull out these groups of students, have those conversations, and then work with the counselors to do that more intense one-on-one conversation with them.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's the exact same questions to follow up on that. Does the counselor and the advisor have the same access to illuminate and share the same thing that this board admin would have?
They do. The difference is that, as Mr. Vanders has stated, they don't have the ability to direct or
To what, I'm sorry,
to direct.
the direct,
To
yeah.
direct the supervisory aspect of it, to be able to actually say, hey, as one of the instructional leaders of the school site, in working with the administrative team, these are the agreements or strategies that we're going to work, and then be able to use that as part of the work that they do with the teachers. A fellow advisor can't go in and tell the colleague, hey, you got to do it this way, or that way. A counselor can't go in and tell a teacher, make sure you do this way. They can suggest it as part of maybe the work that they do, which it is done, but the accountability aspect of it comes from the administrator.
So that opened up two specific questions. One, just show on that one. The students get a D in the example you gave. The student get a D. It pop up on the counselor computer screen because we all have the same access. So the counselor then talk to that students. Then you have the Ford admin to talk to that students. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, so one suggested use is to bring them in as a group, right? Because you have to do it's like there's these different levels of support that you can provide for a student. And so ideally in this situation, you could have the associate principal do that initial conversation as a group, right? And then do a warm handoff for those kids that need a little bit more with the counselor, where the counselor then can sit with them one-to-one, right? And so the associate principal of tier support could potentially do the meeting with all those students that have been pulled in or in smaller groups. And then as issues come up and understanding, direct them to the appropriate additional resources, which could be academic counseling, mental health support through the social worker, a referral to the care team, a referral for the parent community involvement, especially because their parent doesn't have access to seeing their grades or whatever it may be out of that result of that whole group conversation.
But the counselor and the advisor have access to the exact same thing. And they could still have that conversation with the students about the dean, talk with the parents, etc.
Of course.
And refer
Of
to
course.
if they need mental health. So what is the added values, the secret sauce that make all this magic work then?
The accountability aspect of it, and the fact that this is just one example, right? I don't want us to get tied down on this one particular strategy that I provided as an example for, Lee asked a question about what's the day-to-day. That's an example. The added value is exactly what we've been stating. And so it's that coordination of the existing positions to really systematize and do it in a way that is consistent. And that's really going to then allow us to be able to measure the impact in a way where we can say, hey, there's fidelity to implementation. And because there's fidelity to implementation, these are the expected outcomes that we have.
So we currently have a number 3, or in some cases 4, and two our school have 4 admins that could do the coordination, but they're not doing the coordination because they're putting out fire. Am I correct in my limited understanding of
I tried to
I mean,
capture that in
they
my
are, their
notes.
time is, there's competing demands, but
Right.
I don't want to minimize the role of.
We're not.
site
We're just trying to
administrators
understand
to that.
we just want to move, to just have an understanding. So how do we know that the 4 admin won't also be putting out fire? Because some schools have more fire than others. Let's just be honest. That's the reality. So if there's some school have more fire, How do you know this doesn't get pulled into solving and addressing the fire?
I mean, they may, right? We're off. Sometimes I get pulled in. I visited sites and I go come out to go put out fires. You pay me well. I know you don't pay me just to go out and pull fires and that I'm supposed to ignore that, right? And so the reality of the day-to-day that happens in the school site is it changes every day. And so there could be 2 fires versus 5 fires versus no fires, right? The intent of the role of a principal, for example, is that of an instructional leader who's going to be able to adhere to the standards of the educational leadership, which include that articulation of a vision and the execution of that, right? Because on a certain day they're putting out a fire, doesn't mean that that releases them from that obligation of having to be able to be that lead instructional leader, of being able to carry out the mission and vision of what has been established for their school site, and then ultimately for us as a district. But there will be, I want to be fully transparent that there may be an occasion where if you're visiting a site, Trustee Doe, and you see the administrator of tier student support breaking up a fight, if potentially that is what happened, that doesn't mean that they're not doing their other work. There may be a cause for, yes, at that moment to respond to a crisis and to put out a fire, but it doesn't mean that the majority of the work is going to be that. The intended role of a principal, the intended role of an APED, the intended role of an APA is that of instructional leadership, and then through their respective roles. For the APED, building that master schedule that is meeting the needs of our students and adhering to the course offerings that we need to make sure that we are here. The APA is working to ensure that there's a positive school climate, but ultimately the work of the LCAP, the goals that are established in there, is not just the job of one person. It's this collective work that has to happen. And so will this new associate principal have to put out fires? Probably. But
Look, the reality is,
intent
yeah.
and the reality is that the purpose for us bringing this forth is to really be able to hone in on those students that have surfaced in the early warning system to allow for tangible interventions to be put in place in a coordinated effort with the additional positions that have been put in place here in collaboration with the principals and the existing assistant associate principals, so that we have a better opportunity for our students to be able to succeed, because we have the added support and the added coordination for us providing those services to the students.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, look, I know Mr. Nguyen want to say something, but if you don't want.
No, just briefly in response to your inquiry about the counselors and their abilities to, although Bishop Manager said that, our counseling ratio is lower than the state average. Our counseling team has reported that, they don't have time to meet with their individual caseloads as is. And so we wouldn't want to add more onto their plate at this point, right?
No one is asking A or B or C other than trying to figure out the question that Lee had asked is about what exactly day to the day. And so I'm just want to play that scenario out. Okay, so the student had a D, the counselor receive it, see it, then what's next, right? And I think what I'm hearing from Ms. Marquez is that you need an admin to coordinate that. So I am to coordinate that process. No.
No, I'm
Also,
sorry.
The council, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The councils, if they spot that D, they'll meet with the individual students. That's part of their role and their job.
Right.
The administrator has the ability to not just look at one student's D, but potentially 100 students who have Ds, and then, coordinate and call for that meeting with 100 students, and then direct those counselors to, hey, don't forget about these other 99 students with Ds as well.
Yeah, and in addition, I think the added value is that they have the opportunity to be able to see and look at patterns, right? One of the things that the early warning system does for us is, yes, target those individual students, but allows us to be able to see how many of the students are there because they only have one D. How many of the students are there because it's just attendance? How many of them are there because it's a behavior? And then that's when the collaboration with the administrative team comes in, because then they could meet together and say, hey, here are the patterns that we're seeing. So what are the things, what are the levers, what are the initiatives, what are the strategies that we need to make sure that are in place to be able to address these patterns that we're seeing, so that then as they're leading collaboration with teachers, as the principals leading the collaboration, the principal can speak to, hey, this is the data that's been presented to us. We are finding that we have, yes, an overall trend of an A through G rate of 53%. Yet when you look at it disaggregated by these students, let's say by race or by program, and when you look at this last grading period, we've identified that the majority of the students that are on here, it's due to their getting an F or a D in math. So how do we work with our math department to be able to get at what's happening there? What is that we need to do? Is it factors outside? And if they are they within our control? Do we need to bring parents in so that they understand what has to happen? And so that's the ability that an administrator has at a school site to be able to look at what can I lead? What can I coordinate? What can I collaborate with my staff, and being able to make changes that are going to impact student outcomes.
So just for that, the lack of clarity is the added values, because you have 3 or in some case 4 admins who already can also do that. But whether the balance between putting out fire on the academics is unclear to me. So so again, for the admin, for administration, since next year, so you're evaluating this to answer Trustee Lake questions about performance and how to measure it, we need to have that clarity, what that means of progress, right? And how the specifically added for an admin had add value to solve addressing that issues. And so I think that's where the lack of clarity, we all agree the same thing, but it's what's unconvincing or unclear to me, and I think to a number of folks, is what exactly the Ford admin will do that the counselor and advisors are not, right? We understand that they have the ability to direct, but so is that the other 3 who are, or 4 in existence, right? So what's that added value, that marginal improvement, and what is the marginal improvement equal to the data we see? And yes, just the area, we do care about the qualitative as well as the quantitative, both of which are relevant, right? You know, we do hear and we do anecdotal, but at the end of the day, if we wait 3 to 5 years, that's a substantial amount of investment.
Well, I said a minimum of 3, doesn't have to be 5, but 1 is,
3,
doesn't
yeah.
make sense.
Yes.
Okay, all right, we have a motion on the floor made by Trustee Herrera. Do we have a second?
Before we go into that, I wanted to respond to what Ms. Marquez responded to my question. Follow-up question. So you mentioned one of the examples that you mentioned that the admin could do is after working with a counselor, they would decide that a student would need additional instruction, additional tutoring. Who would be doing that?
So if we already have like our online tutoring, right? So if it's already an existing resource, then it would be a referral to that aspect. If there's an identification that there's a program needed, that there's an initiative that needs to be added to that school site, then it will come out of that. And then they would meet with their principal to be able to discuss that. What's the response that is going to be required? Sort of like a message. Is it an individual student response, or is it a programmatic response to a group of students that we've identified that there is a need to work with our math department to figure out what's going on based on the data that we're seeing? And so it would be coordinated by the administration at the school site. And then it would depend on what that initiative is, where it could be working with teachers specifically to do that, working for classified staff to do it, or bringing in additional community-based resources.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just wanted to say that a lot of what I think we've heard when we asked what the specific role of the admin is that they would have to work with someone else, or they would have to collaborate with someone else to solve whatever problem arises. And then the benefit is that they can see large numbers of students, they can oversee everything, so it's uniform. My only concern is that if teachers and counselors and other staff are already so overworked, how would they have the time to address these issues with the admin? Even if the admin is doing part of the work by looking at the students as a whole and deciding, you know, where they need to go, how would counselors have enough time to meet with the admin for all of these different students, or teachers to tutor extra students or things like that?
Yeah, so there's already structures in place, right? So each of the school sites have a collaboration calendar that they would use those existing structures to be able to flush out the details of whatever it is that the work that's needed. As Mr. Nguyen has mentioned, each of the counselors already have their caseload. So it wouldn't be that we're adding caseload to you is just maybe you're working differently with the existing caseload that you have and more intentionally based on whatever the data is that was surfaced and in collaboration, right? We're an organization that there is no one person that can do it all, right? One of the biggest factors in student achievement is collective efficacy, right? And that essentially is the adults in the system believing that they can make a difference. And that happens and is built by the leadership of the principals, and then it's carried out through the leadership of the associate principals, and then obviously carried out through teacher leaders into the culture and climate of the school, where there's this key explicit alignment and vision of the adults in the system working collectively for the betterment of the student. Yes, you're right? There's a lot of teachers that because of their willingness and the capacity, they get tapped a lot to do a lot of things, right? And so it's the job of the administrative team to look at how do we use existing structures? How do we use existing staff? How do we use new staff? How do we shift how we are working to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the students? And I really think that this position has the potential to be able to shift our outcomes because of the I believe, clarity of what they're going to do. I know we are going to disagree on that there's this perceived lack of clarity, but I actually believe that it is extremely clear as to the work that they're going to be doing.
Okay, we have.
Mr. Superintendent Venezi, if would you willing to bring that clarity in terms of the work and the metrics and what measurements, or however you and Trustee Lay described it earlier, back to us early next year as a starting point of conversation, not the result, but here's how we're going to measure the performance so that the board can have a real discussions. Would that be am I addressing what you're asking for? And then you can, and Mr. Venzi, are you comfortable doing that somewhere?
So you mentioned private conversations, right?
This one we cannot be private
No,
about.
no, that's true. But just know that I have conversations with all of you. And so I am aware of what Bonlay's request is, and I'm aware of what's of value to her. And it is what she set out here tonight with the student group that she clearly identified. And so, yes, all of our LCAP already is data rich and quantitative data rich.
Yeah.
I'm going to just say that I was going to say this after we voted, but I'll just go ahead and say it now. There's a learning for me here as a district, as a governing board, as a staff, just in our conversation here tonight, that we cannot allow one position to keep us off our goal or allow it to divide us. And we need to make sure that as we discuss how we're going to grow and how we're going to give it the benefit of the doubt. And for one person, it's showed to me in a year. For some person, get it in place and let's see if you grow it once it's established. It's clear to me that we have some growing to do as an institution about how we look at data, how we use it, and what it informs. I'm not saying anybody here up here is wrong or right. I'm saying as a group, as a governance team, we have some learning to do about the data we look at, what data we look at, when we look at it, and what does it actually inform? What can we do with that data? I get that the other learning I'm having is that we are focusing on, we've talked about 4 positions tonight, adding them to both the budget and the plan. But there's one position that culturally in our institution, I don't know if we use the word trigger or gets us to respond differently. Provoke, occur to someone, just that we're not asking the same questions about those positions. We're not asking those same questions about the other positions that exist in the LCAP. And that's all right, because I get the sensitivity of the issue. But as we grow forward, I would like us to really discuss, how do we look at data? And to what degree can you isolate a singular position or program and a specific result? Or in what way is our work collaborative and collective? And that we have to understand that. And I think that's growth that we're going to be able to have together. That's not me backing away from data. That's not me backing away from trying to see what makes the difference. That's me saying that as a group, we're going to have to learn to do that more effectively. And where I think that's a healthy point for us to be in, is that we've never had this conversation before, which means we've grown to this point. Means we've set up the data system, we put in the supports, and we're understanding things now in a very complex way that, whoa, it takes, oh, here we go. It takes a village, it takes a system, and that is very hard to isolate one data point to the other. Again, I'm not backing away on metrics for analyzing the utility of different aspects in our system. But, you know, even the short conversation between two board members tonight on what data point would you look at for McKinney-Vento students, we don't have an immediate answer right now in that. And that's why I say we're going to have to grow to that. And in terms of budgeting, we're also going to have to grow to say that as we move forward and we look at that, I think it would be unfair to just put one job title under the I'm getting the word in Spanish, lupa. Mike, magnifying glass, or the magnifying glass. Sorry, team. All right. What's that? There's a Spanish phrase, bajo la lupa. You're looking at something very beneath the magnifying. All right. So I'm just sorry. That's, you know, that happens at times.
That bilingual brain.
That bilingual brain sometimes it just kind of cuts in the other thing. My point simply is, remember, I truly valued our conversations. I truly valued our conversations. And I was challenged by your return on investment and thinking, okay, how would I isolate a position? And right now I'm going to tell you, I don't have that answer. And if that, but I'm totally committed to growing, not just with you, but as an entire institution about how we analyze data and what we know it can inform and where we know, even though we'd like to have A to B direct line, that sometimes it gets squiggly all in between. And I know that you're committed to that. And when I say about the listening, we have changed our evaluation system. We will be bringing the data from each site, quantitative data. We will be asking for what is your action plan for that. That is what we'll be presenting. And we're going to hold people accountable towards that growth. When I say people, I do mean admin, but I mean our entire system. Because our entire system, I believe, can work with greater collective efficacy towards our student data. And so I thank you for all of you for what you've shared. But sitting here tonight, I realize that while I still support this plan because I think it's brilliantly written. Secondly, I think it was done with integrity and with an intention for partnership.
I just want to
just
push
need to
back
say
on-
that one more time.
Sorry.
I do believe it was carried out with integrity and with an intention for participation. I've also learned tonight and along the way that the boards need or want to be able to feel comfortable with where people are and to be informed in being able to lead up to a vote does require perhaps a separate process along the way. And we have to make sure that we do our statutory commitments to how the LCAP is produced. There's rules to this thing. But in listening tonight, if we need to find the parallel path of how the board informs itself about what's in the LCAP and think, I don't have a suggestion for that tonight. I will even assume that I've gotten everybody's words a little bit wrong, but what I hear is an intent for earlier and deeper participation, along with the excellent input practice that we do at a far greater level than other districts around us. And I thank the team for that commitment. But the other thing I'm going to say is I can't let one issue, even though people are going to perhaps look at me and snarl, oh, there's the, you know, you're the associate principal of tiered student supports guy. Yeah, I'll wear that. I'll own that because I think it's a necessary step for our growth. But I also will just need to name there's too much good And there's too much collaborative effort to let one item ruin us. And second, as a part of this process, we have heard very clearly that people want to work on safety and positive climate, want to look at how we're managing our IEPs and what we're doing to make problem solving and problem-based learning and CTE programs of greater accessibility to our students. And I'll say, let's get to work. If I was egregious in any way, I sincerely apologize to the system. But I just like to say, I am completely confident that everybody in our system and all our groups are willing to work for the collaborative good that is expressed in this plan and those 3 items that I just expressed a minute ago. Thanks.
First of all, I agree with many of the sentiment that you have about the need for collaborations and that the intentions of adding another admin is to help our students. I really genuinely believe that everyone who's here, my colleagues included, care deeply about each and every one of the students of districts. That is our goal. We obviously have different opinion how and the standards that we hold. I hold a very high standards for our professional high-level staff, because I think that's why I supported and I voted for a salary adjustment last year for the top level, because I believe they deserve it. And the market should deserve to be reward them accordingly. So in that spirit, last year, if you remember, I also want to have this early conversation early on about the metrics, the measurements, about alternative options and trade-off and opportunity costs. All these are necessary. And the part where I disagree with you is not just this one particular that I want to put under the microscope or the magnifying glass. If you remember, both in our private and our public, I want to put multiple investment under the magnifying. They deserve to be, because they are of a substantial amount. Obviously, we're not talking about when we talk about a few $1,000s, sure, it's probably not what our time, that heavy investment of time, because it doesn't make sense. But when we talk about multi-million dollars investments under the backdrop that there will be reductions on funding for the district, yeah, we should. And if this is the starting point because of the Ford admin and open the door for all the position, all the role, all the investment we make, I said that's a wonderful thing. When the district start thinking about what return on investment for our students, that is not a bad thing. And I hope our superintendent and administration would consider not only for this one role, but multiple, as I've requested both in our private conversations, did you remember, and also in public as well.
Yeah, that's why I thank you for your comments, because I do remember those conversations. And that's why I was noticing that tonight's conversation. So I want to specify why I said what I said was tonight's conversation was really zeroing in of the hundreds of positions within the LCOP and one. And what I'm saying is I think we're at a position, as you suggested in our conversations, for us as a governance team and as a district as a whole, to learn how do we look at data, how does it inform us, and how do we want to utilize that? And I think that's something that will not be instantaneous. It'll be over time, but I do share the goal of us to be able to look at how do we utilize data, what does it inform, and how do we respond?
And you want to measure what matters. You want to measure what matters, because there's different way of measuring. And I think we want to encourage that. One of the class that I took, you all know how much I love taking classes. So it's called Measure What Matter by John Doerr. And I think it's now available on Coursera. I'm not pitching Coursera, I'm not any company.
For that on the site.
But yeah. But I do want us to look at multiple ways as an organization to look to measure it.
Great. Okay.
Fantastic.
Last comment.
I want
Last
to
comment,
appreciate,
please.
I want to appreciate the superintendent for his concluding remarks. And, I really do trust your heart and your intention to learn from all the dynamics in play here and how we can really be a stronger team. And I also want to say that it didn't capture, maybe you captured about 75% or 80% at most of what I would like to, us all to understand in terms of what's possible in this organization. My concerns encompass but transcend the LCAP. It's how we are at the table with each other on succeeding issues, especially issues that have, a great deal of disagreement to start with. It just goes way beyond this LCAP. And there'll be more time to, I'm radically committed, and I'm just giving notice I'm radically committed to this being a case study for how to strengthen our relationships and work, powerfully as a team. And that's all. Thank you.
Radically committed. I like that.
Yes, radically committed.
All right.
This is has just begun.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay,
I just have one final short thing to say.
okay, and then as
Um,
soon as Lee is done, then I'll continue with the calling for the vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I definitely see the value in adding this position as well as the entire LCAP plan, because as Mr. Vanderzee said, it's not just this one position, it's lots of different positions, lots of different things that will definitely help students. And I have full faith that it will be helping students. And I just wanted to maybe propose a solution to how Trustee Lay wanted to see data in a year to see if it's worth it, but Trustee Herrera was pointing out that it'll take longer than a year for it to show in the data. What we could potentially do next year is look at the specific people, like counselors and teachers, that this admin had to work with in order to help students, and see from them if they feel that it added to their workload in such a significant way that they would need further support, as in more of them.
Hmm.
So we could analyze this in a year, not with data that won't have really changed, but rather with trying to talk to the specific people that were involved in helping the admin help the students.
And Lee, I emailed you my notes on this issue, which starts to get from my perspective answers to the questions you were asking, Ms. Marquez. So just want to let you know I emailed you.
And put it on the record. Okay, thank you, Lee. Appreciate that. All right, so we have a motion on the floor by trustee Herrera,
I'll second.
seconded by trustee Cortezi. Lee, how do you vote?
No.
Board, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? Vote passes 4-5. Oh,
And I could use a very brief break.
yeah, I think I can too. I might grab a cup of coffee. All right, so that's it. 5 minutes. Is 9:02. It's that. Great. It's 9:02. 2 minutes past 9. Yeah, okay, 9. O'clock. Okay, so
Gotta get out of here.
if we can just, like to,
Someone give an estimate of how much more time?
so.
Council,
Rogelio,
I'm speaking, asking council.
Yes.
end it.
Yes, do we have existing practice or policy about at what time in the evening we adjust the agenda? I believe it's 10 o'clock, but are we able to go back to item 5.01? Is that available for us to remove some items and move them to August?
You don't have to go back to 5.0. You can just, as you hit each of those items, you can either carry them to the next meeting, or I guess for the benefit of the public, yes, you might want to just identify which ones you'll be carrying to August. So it's okay to go back to item 5.
Great, okay, so then we'd like to go back to item 5. We want to carry specifically item number 13.01.
Correct.
This is a presentation on child nutrition services to the August board meeting. So we have quite a few more presentations, and we want to make sure that,
This is the dilemma I just find myself in.
okay,
So then what we'll do is we'll do a brief yet transparent presentation on the next 2 items
Great.
for you to all take action on. And then I believe if you need to step away, then we'll just carry on. But I think it would be vital for, I think it is important that you are here for items
Budget, yeah.
8.3 and 8.03 and 8.04.
okay. So 8.03, it's adopting the resolution to confirm Eastside Union High School District's commitment to fiscal solvency. Ms. Hunter?
Thank you. As we spoke briefly at our June 8th meeting, there would be a fiscal solvency resolution coming before the board as it relates to our multi-year projection, the budget, looking at 2 years in 2024-25 and 2025-26. So in that first year out in 2020 and 24-25, it is a $2.2 million reduction of expenditures. And in 25-26, it's $44 million of reduction of expenditures. So this really is the commitment by the board, the acknowledgement that there, as we look at those out years and there is a budget imbalance, that the work on the budget would happen before those years.
Got it. And this is something that we do on a yearly basis too, right?
As needed.
As needed. Yep, I remember voting on this in previous years. Okay, so do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll
Is it
move to approve.
moved by Cortese? Do I have a second? Seconded by Lay. Lee, how do you vote? Aye. Board, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Vote passes unanimously. So that's 8.03. Thank you for that, Ms. Huntoon. And I believe you're on next as well for the next one. We're on 8.04 presentation. Approve and adopt the proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24.
Wonderful, thank you. Superintendent Vandersee, you'll be my driver. Wonderful, thank you. So this evening, just updates to the budget, the preliminary budget that you saw on June 8th. And as again, go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. We are here to our budget cycle, or now to the last item for this fiscal year, although it is really the beginning for the 23-24 year. And so you're looking at the proposed adopted budget for this evening, which does reflect the plan that was just approved. And so it supports the goals, actions, and services that are included in the LCAP for the 23-24 year. One more. Actually, I think we can go to the next slide. So what I want to point out here on this particular slide, from what you saw on June 8th, as we continue to work on that preliminary budget, any changes that were adjusted in the LCAP, it was adjusted in the budget, but also looking at any reconciliations that needed to happen. And so I'm going to take you to the 2 out years, the 24-25. It dropped from the 2.5 million to a 2.2 million as what is needed for a reduction in expenditures based on the information that we know at this point in time. The budget was based on the governor's May revise because that's information that we have at this time. And if you look at the 25-26 year, that number is 44 million. There was when you look at that ending fund balance, it was 18.5. It has dropped to 16.4 with the adjustments that were made in those multiple years. And so that really was the adjustment. Next slide. Okay, so as we go into just 10 days or so, we will start our new fiscal year at 23-24. And so we will continue to monitor any changes that may come from the state or the local level, the county, and we will continue to monitor the budget, but we will also be starting our budget advisory committee, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that in August. And we will have multiple meetings throughout the year. And then in September, what you will see is the unaudited actuals, which really is for our current year, 22-23. And so that will really be the end of this fiscal year. And that's all I have for you this evening.
And just as a reminder, this budget includes all of the expenditures that are in the LCAP plan that you just approved. That's factored into these budget numbers.
Thank you, Ms. Huntoon. Colleagues, Lee, are there any comments or questions for Ms. Huntoon? Appreciate your hard work and your clarity on this. Thank you.
And I want to thank the staff. Ms. Sylvia Palaio is here.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
staff.
you.
There has to be action, but needs on this one, right?
Huh? Yes,
Oh.
yes. We're not there yet. Oh, good. You're not the first one, Tom. All right,
We thank staff, but we're still gonna vote.
All right, so I'd like to call for a vote. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Moved by
second.
Doe, seconded by Lay. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board, all of those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Vote passes unanimous.
We have public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I have 2 online public comments. The first one is from Laura Rice, staff member. My name is Laura Rice. I work at Santa Teresa High School. We were not given access to the art, music, instructional materials block grant in the spring of 2023. I am concerned for the fall of 2023 as my classroom does not have some essential materials and equipment necessary for me to carry out the required curriculum. Several people in my department will be starting the school year with some empty supply cupboards and student learning will be impacted. This will be my 22nd year in the district and funding for the arts has been chronically underfunded. It is frustrating to see that even when the district gets an art, music, instructional materials block grant, art teachers are still left scrambling to somehow make it work. Second, public comment from Catherine Barron, staff member. I'd like to request instructional materials for my French 4 AP class for the upcoming school 2024 because I will have to teach a combined class of French 3 and French 4 students. It is crucial that my 5 French 4 students access online materials. To this day, online access has not been available for the last 5 years. Online access provides them with the ability to work more independently with many options for them to explore on their own, such as topics which we are not able to cover in class. I requested and successfully funds from my principal, Mr. Kleckner, who was unable to provide, and I also contacted my world language SAC, Mrs. Escobedo, for many years and successfully as well. You're basically my last chance. The cost is $127.72 per person for the 5 students and the teacher's access. AP Prennan's second edition, student hardcover print and digital, Flex Text Explorer, $127.72 times 6, including teacher's access, total $766.20. Thank you very much for your consideration. That is the end of comment under 804.
Just so board is aware, staff is aware of these issues and are working with those individuals.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was item 804. Now we're moving to section 9. There's no items under this section. Now we are on section 10. So members of the public may address the board on any subject not on tonight's agenda. However, provisions of the Brown Act preclude any action. As an unagendized item, no response is required from the board or district staff, and no action can be taken. However, the board may instruct the superintendent to agendize the item for a future meeting. Any person may address the board on any item on the agenda meeting. Persons wishing to address the board may participate and comment as follow. In-person public comments may be made in person in the meeting room by filling out a public speaker request form at the room's entrance. And it looks like this. When your name is called, please come to the podium, state your name for the record. You will also raise your virtual hand in Zoom to request to speak and offer comments in real time. You will have 2 minutes to speak. People may also fill out speaker request form via online submission. Comments should be limited to no more than 1,000 characters in length. Please reference your submission on the agenda item number for your comment. Your comment will be read out loud as part of the public meeting. Do we have any, we don't have, I don't see any requests here, right? There's nothing here.
We have an online
Okay, but we have online. Okay, can we read online public comment, please?
comment from Kathleen Lynch, staff member. In January 23, my Oak Grove Culinary Arts program was allocated money from the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Grant. For the last 18 years, I have used my own money to purchase supplies necessary for my curriculum. My expectation is that I will receive a reimbursement within a reasonable amount of time. On June 1st, I received a reimbursement for my January, February expenditures. I'm still waiting for the rest of my semester's reimbursement totaling $1,341.86. These lab supplies are essential to my program, and the only way to provide them for my students is if I purchase them, and I must use my own money. The lack of timely reimbursements is creating a financial and mental hardship for me. I shouldn't have to float my personal money for the length of time with no communication from the district about when I will be reimbursed. I am reaching out to you to let you know that this is an unsustainable situation in the hope that you will find a solution to this situation. Public comment from Virginia Engelfinger, staff member. My name is Virginia Engelfinger. I've been teaching digital art at Independence since 2004. I wanted to address the lack of clarity during the past year as to the process of how the art grant funds are being disseminated. I waited till the end of the school year to purchase portfolios, art supplies, and print work in hopes the grant monies would be made available before the school year ended. I was forced to cover these costs. This is something I do every year so as to run a highly successful digital arts program. This has been a huge financial burden. It is reassuring to know that the district, ESSA leadership, and the SACs are working on establishing protocol, including what instructional materials are justified for approval, as they must relate to the California Content Common Core standards. I am appreciative of all their hard work. Please make available the grant funds before the beginning of the next school year as we may continue to disseminate quality instruction. Thank you.
End of public comment. Great. I don't think we have anybody raising their hand, right? Okay. Okay, that's section 10. Now we're going on to 11. There's nothing under section 11. We're on section 12 now. 12.01, discussion and presentation and action regarding 2023 California Accountability Dashboard Indicators. Teresa Marquez and Kristen King.
Yeah, this will actually be presented by my Director of Assessment and Accountability, Ms. Kristen King.
Kristen, we missed you. It's been a while. Welcome
It
back.
has. Is this, am I on? Yes.
You're on.
Hi. Anyway, glad to be back. My name is Kirsten King, Director of Assessment and Accountability. And I'm here to present to you tonight the presentation on Eastside local indicator data. And we always start with the frame of our Eastside welcoming communities. And if you go on to the next one, because I want to do this quick, but just a reminder, this is a mandatory presentation, and it's mandatory that it's in conjunction with the LCAP presentation. So that's why we have to do this tonight, even though it's been a long night. We don't have any choice. We post the data in August on the dashboard, California dashboard. So everything you're going to see tonight are the things that get posted on the dashboard. And by posting it on the dashboard, we get a status of met. You don't post it, then it's not met, basically. So you'll see that. So on the next one, this is a reminder. All the outlined areas in pink are where you see our local indicator data. They're all aligned with the 8 state priorities, just like all of the other items on the dashboard. So we have basic needs, so teachers, instructional materials, facilities, access to a broad course of study, local climate information, parent and family engagement, and implementation of academic standards. Those are the areas that we'll go over tonight quickly. And on that one, just so you see, if you haven't seen, the dashboard's purple this year instead of colorful because we only have status. Next year, at a little after Christmas time, it'll become colorful again.
What do you mean by status?
So the dashboard looks at status and change. So it looks at current year status and change from the prior year. And because of the pandemic, we don't have prior year. So. All right, so this is priority number 1. And for the top one, this is the misassignment of teachers of English language learners. The intent is that the state will be providing this data. They did this last year, didn't provide it, and they're doing it again this year, and they haven't provided it again yet. So they're working on it they collect it, they just haven't gotten it together yet to give us the data we need for this data point. Okay. No, they're the 2 other areas, but that's fine. So this is where we input facilities. And obviously all of our students have standards aligned instructional material, and we have to report out on the FIT data, which are the facilities inspection reports. Then with each item, we have the opportunity to make a written comment, a short written comment. So we'll be posting this regarding our upkeep of facilities and regular inspections. And then if you go to the next page, we take an opportunity to, when we talk about standards line in curriculum, to highlight the wireless, community wireless projects that we have been doing and providing our students with Chromebooks. So the next one is priority 2, which is the implementation of the state academic standards. This one is done using a self-reflection tool and rubric. And so if you, that's the scale on the bottom there. But if you go to the next page, and so the director of instructional service went through this tool with the subject area coordinators in looking at the district-wide implementation of academic standards. So you will see the work that the district has done reflected in this around the identification of the priority standards and the work that's been identified with the study from WestEd on what we need to do with the English language learner program. Then this kind of just also sums that up, and this will be the comment that we post regarding this item. Next one is parent engagement, and this is also done using a self-reflection tool and a rating scale. When Associate Superintendent Marquez did her LCAP surveys with the parents. She specifically targeted questions she knew we were going to have to address in this tool. And so the data you see reflected on the next several pages come from the data that she gathered in the work that she did with parents on the LCAP. Okay, and so we know that we're doing some pretty good job at welcoming our parents. I'll just summarize up the next several slides. The sites have many opportunities for parents to come, learn about the site, interact with teachers and staff. We do at the district level, but we also know that in general, we have populations that we're not targeting really well and engaging really well. And so we know we have some improvement to do in those areas. And that will be, we have to post multiple times, but that's the last piece that we'll post on that particular priority. Trying to go quick. All right, now it's the climate survey. So everybody has to report the results of their climate survey legally. According to this ed code, we only have to do it every other year, but we choose to do it twice every year. So we give the panorama survey, and we've been doing that for a while. If you look on the next slide, I changed it up a little bit based on comments from last year. We post the fall data, and the fall data from the panorama survey was also what's used in the LCAP, because that's what we have at the time when we're creating the new LCAP for the year. But I'm also gave you spring. So when you look at this chart, what's going to be posted on the dashboard are the dark blue boxes and the yellow fall data. But for your information, you can see change from fall to spring. So we report out on school connectedness and specifically connected to an adult at the school, and positive climate of support for academic learning. And then the light blue underneath that are the supporting questions from that category. And school safety, and the questions below it are what support the ratings we get up there for school safety, and then knowledge and fairness of discipline, rules, and norms. So again, we post the dark blue and the yellow on the dashboard. And then the comment in that one is just about change over time. So we just read out and present the data that way. Last one, I believe, is access to a broad course of study. And this one has a sort of different leading questions and areas that we have to address when we go over this. So we have to identify areas where we believe there might be issues with students accessing a broad course of study. So if you go to the next slide, those number one are the areas that we identified. So English language learners who access a third year of English, math, and science. So these are key components for college and career readiness. English learner AP enrollment, and then access to the least restrictive environment for students with IEPs. So that would be students who are in gen ed classes 80% or more of their time. Then we have the data. So we see what the data is. We have all of those data points have actually improved a little bit for our English language learners. The AP has stayed the same, and then we went down a little bit, which was very discouraging for students in gen ed, but that's kind of, it's a year in the rear data there. And then we have to identify the barriers and the action steps that we will take, which centers around multi-tiered systems of support and strong tier 1 instruction. Are there any questions?
Any questions, colleagues? Go.
Trying to be fast.
On page 20, if you can go back to page 20, please. Advanced technology,
Which one is it?
page 20.
Okay.
You walk me through some of are these questions exactly that's what our students get, or help me understand a little bit about what our students get or what their family get in terms of, well, this.
So these are student questions only,
Right,
not
right, the
family
student,
questions.
Right, this is the student one.
So a question that they would get would be, and adults encourage me to work hard so I can be successful in college, or the job that I choose. And then they'd have strongly agree, neither agree nor disagree, somewhat disagree, or, I think it's like totally disagree.
What am I saying? This is what they get exactly like this. The question.
Light blue are
blue.
exactly like that. Some of them are a compilation, like the safety is a compilation rating that Panorama does based on a series of questions.
So on the safety, when you have compilation, can you break that down for me, please?
Well, underneath the safety are at least 4 of the questions under there, and that might be the questions that it looks at. So you can't see like it's covered by that little world symbol language interpretation available, but one of the questions directly says, I feel safe at my school. And you see that rating for, I present the agree or strongly agree rating on that, which it would be 54%. And then the other things it's looking at are, bullying, harassment, or mean lies spread about you. And correct.
So they get other options as like neutral,
Yeah.
disagree, strongly disagree. So
When I
rather than-
add in the neutral, it goes up to almost 80.
Yeah.
On that one.
In the futures where you add them neutral or unsure, I mean, kind of help understand, because some things, some of the other question prior, the neutral might have a very significant meaning or change our interpretation of that possibly. So if you can help, because 54%, it's a pretty low number, and I'm a little nervous. But so if you can help us when they're neutral, change from 50% to 80%, suddenly, we like to know that.
Okay, so we can, as long as we're doing the same LCAP, we can present one data, and then instead of spring, I could represent to you what it looks like with neutral, agree, and strongly agree.
Of course, you have to follow whatever the guidelines required by LCAP, because it's exactly what this is for. What I'm saying is when there are issues that are of significant importance, such as our safety, from the board perspective, we like to understand that context. If you can then say, okay, when we add that, it changed that number, just so that we have a better understanding.
For that.
I have a question here. So I appreciate seeing the fall and the spring. So thank you for that. I'm curious, like I see a difference in percentage, like literally in everyone, there's like a 1 to 3% discrepancy. Like, is that significant? Is that considered significant when you look at this data and how it's set up and interpreted? Or what's your interpretation of that?
Yeah, my interpretation is we saw just slight decrease from fall to spring, but relatively it stayed pretty consistent. Right? Whereas in some of these metrics, we would hope we would see sort of an improvement, like positive connections with adults at school, things like that. We would want to be able to see that. And hopefully with the new LCAP, we will begin to maybe see some differences in this data than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah. I'm curious, do we know why certain numbers are what they are? Have we pulled out some rationale, or have we seen things that were like, this is our theory behind this or that?
when we look at school level data, you're able to break it down by grade level, by gender, by language learner status, and you can start to see some correlations that let you know, okay, this is where certain groups are feeling differently than other groups. And that's when we look at this, the site-wide, not here on this presentation for the dashboard. But that allows us to target different interventions because we can see this group feels radically different on their campus than the other one does. What we look with this data over time is just see where is it trending? Is it trending up or down? And then
Yeah.
thinking out, okay, why is it where it is and what might we do? And if it doesn't make the difference, what do we try next time?
Yeah, yeah, I think as we get closer to, or as we start hearing from the schools, I'd be interested in hearing, like, what does this mean for the schools? And the student experience, be interested in hearing the trends.
Sure.
And if there's other data points for others, then I'd also be curious as well. I'm not.
So we could definitely do that because this is not the entire panorama survey.
Yeah, yeah, I know, it's a snapshot, right? Enough to provoke.
These are the ones that we're supposed to post on the dashboard
This is
as
a
our local
snapshot,
indicators.
once the snapshot of one page in the photo album. All right, so there's
Oh, a
there-
big photo album?
yeah, this has a lot of questions and what the staff does
Yeah.
is go through what questions we want to ask and then in what category do they inform? So when you get those dark blue squares, just like you were asking for, Trustee Dio, it's just like, did they really ask the question safety? It's like,
Mhm.
no, but in that category, here's the different questions that we've asked them to answer. And you'll see also that there's differences in how they ask the parents the question in the same area as opposed to a staff member, as opposed to a student. So in looking at this data, you have to understand not everyone's taking the same, in the different groups, everyone's taking the same survey, but they are looking to inform in the same areas.
And this is a survey that's across the state, right?
That's California Healthy Kids Survey, but many of the questions on here are very similar and aligned to what was on the California Healthy Kids Survey.
Because I feel like I hear a lot of districts talk about panorama.
That's because it's great. You can give it to all of your kids and you get the data back like this versus chicks. You don't get to see it
Yeah,
in the same way. And it's only 9th and 11th graders.
got it. Yeah, what this makes me think too is like, are we looking? I don't know if Panorama offers us to be able to see how other places are doing, whether it's near or further, to see, okay, are there trends? Are we trending? What does this make us think? And we can break it down in whichever way we want, but to kind of follow and see where do we fall and why, where there are opportunities, especially as we bring all the supports together. I think that we can get far with that.
Yeah, one tool that it does have, and I don't want to go too deep into this right now, but like a school can look at its data
Mhm.
and then compare where it landed compared to the district average.
Mm,
So are you, and like how far away are you exceeding kind of the district average?
Mhm.
Are you below? And so that's what we like to look at. Like,
okay.
where are we trending above the average? Awesome. Where are we trending below or seeing that we land below? What might we do to move that?
I think what I'm hearing is, I think there's two different two different process. One is the legal requirement of us follow the process and collect the data and present it because that's kind of for a dashboard or whatever agencies, whoever wanted us, that's required. The board, I think, have more interest in called interpretations of that data by comparing what how we do it last year, is how we do compared to other districts, but we're looking for a different set of data for us. Because what we want to know is how does it inform our decisions moving forward when it comes to budgets, on how policies, et cetera. Two different process. So at some point, our superintendent have to tell us, okay, we're gonna do A or B, or how we're gonna figure that formula out.
So we're always going to have to do this A, as you recognize, because it's an obligation. What we were talking about early in the LCAP is about us growing as a district and as a governance board and as a district as a whole, is what data we want to look at. What does it inform? How do we use it to respond? And I think this will be part of that conversation. And in having that conversation, we're going to have to dig into what's available, both in shape, or not just both, in shape, panorama, illuminate, infinite campus. There's a lot of tool and core data warehouse. There's a lot of data. It could wash over you and you feel like it's not helpful. So we're going to just have to be strategic with it.
Data is not information. Right? Information inform us so we can make decisions. And I think that's part of our conversation. So thank you for making my point.
Thank you. Oh, wait.
Thank you.
Hi,
Go
Kristen
ahead,
King.
Trustee Lee.
Well, can you go with page 5 for me? Okay, page 5 mentioned about clean and functional school facilities, and one of the item put in number of identified instance where facility do not meet the good repair standard. Could you elaborate that item for me? Because still have a puzzle in my mind. What is
Yeah.
about the good repair? And
Bad, yeah.
because I'm caring because it's, it struck in my mind that, we have facilities, staff that really take overall, for our, keep our school clean and in a good shape. Am I correct?
Yeah, so every district has to use the facilities inspection tool across the state, first of all.
Mm.
And everybody is required to use that tool to go through all of their facilities once a year.
Okay.
So Matt Sadakis does that with his team. And so when they go through it, it has a whole checklist of items that they have to look at. It's huge. So for the most part on these 185 instances of not in good repair, they were minor type of things like extension cords being used as a main power source where they shouldn't have been, broken light bulbs. Is this what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there were 2 instances of extreme deficiencies that involved blocking a fire extinguisher, and it was identified at the site and corrected immediately. It was being blocked by furniture. And another one was incorrectly storing, I think it was propane.
All right.
Okay. And that was corrected immediately. So we have to report these, but it's really like damaged ceiling tiles, light bulbs, and those get corrected right away.
Oh, so we're gonna have to have regularly check, for our district. So we're gonna prevent all of this, liability as well as problems later on, right?
Yeah, well, here's what I'll say. As a district as large as ours, with the amount of facilities that we have and the amount of classrooms and drinking fountains and light bulbs and ballasts, for it to be 185 minor instances says that our facilities and maintenance and operation crew and is doing a great job, and that staff is using the work order system very effectively, and that our people are responding for an institution as large as ours to have 185 minors that they immediately can correct because they're that minor is really a testament to the good work that they're doing year round.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Well, that's pretty good. For my one more questions on parent engagement. I'm looking this and you have a self-reflection tool. So how do we get, involved with the parent, for them to have the tool and building the relationship?
So Associate Superintendent Marquez probably wants to respond to this, but I'll just let you respond to it.
Thank you. So this is the tool that is created by the California Department of Education. So what I do is I take the statements and I turn them into questions included in the survey. And so then my assessment is based on the responses that I get from the parents from the survey, including responses that I got from the numerous forums that were conducted, as well as from our advisory group, which is our ELAC, our DAC DLAC up here at the district office, which is consistent of parents from across our school sites who are parents of English learners, as well as parents who are members of the school site council at each of their school sites. And so taking the responses from the survey as well as the responses that I get from the DAC DLAC is how then I use the tool to assess where we are in those levels and then identify our area of need.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work, Christine, and as well as Social Superintendent Teresa Marcus. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, that is 12.01.
It does require action, Madam
Oh,
President.
it does. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, before we go into the action, I want to see if, do we have any, I don't see any forms here, but any online public comment? No, and no virtual hands raised. Okay. Is there a motion on the floor?
A second.
Moved by trustee Lay, seconded by Cortese. All those in favor, oh, sorry, wait. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'm not sure how this would be recorded because it's just 4 people present. Okay, 4-0 with Manuel Herrera out. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now we are on section 13. All right, before I read this, how would you, it's such a random question. How would you like me to address you? Michelle, Ms. Huntoon, Dr. Huntoon?
Dr. Huntoon's fine.
Thank you. Apologies for not doing that
No worries,
earlier.
no worries.
Okay, so this is action to adopt resolution 22-23-32 regarding education protection account EPA. Dr. Huntoon?
So Proposition 30 and which was back in 2012, and Proposition 55 requires this as a statutory requirement for expenditures for the education protection account. And so this is coming before you and providing you with that information for this year. It's looking at the revenues coming from taxes. So taxes are collected at the state level. It's based on percentages for our district as it applies statewide. And so it's a formula that determines our funding. So it's showing you that it's 53 million.
Million, okay. Colleagues, do we have any questions or comments? No. Do we have any public speakers? No, no hands. Okay, so calling for a motion? You were like a really fast, like motion maker and seconder, if that's words that are appropriate.
Are you asking us to slow down?
No way, you do you. I just want to acknowledge that. Moved by trustee Lay, seconded by trustee Doe. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? All right, so vote is 4-0 with Manuel Herrera not present. Great, I got it right. Okay, that's 13.02. Now we're moving to 13.03. Dr. Huntoon. So this is approved addendum number 1 to the current charter school facility use agreement with Luis Valdez Leadership Academy.
So this is for the facility use agreement, which expires June 30th, 2023. And so this amendment takes it to June 30th, 2024.
Do we have any comments? No comment, no hands. Okay, calling for a motion. Yeah.
You explained that addendum, just out of curiosity, by the way, just.
I'm sorry, oh, go ahead.
You explained that addendum. I'm reading it right now. As you can give me a quick Cliff Note version for the
So,
public.
so essentially what's occurring here is rather than entering into negotiations of a new 3 or 5 year facilities use agreement, they're asking for, we're extending the current agreement that we have through June 30, 2024. During that time, we will be developing this subsequent facilities use agreement with that facility. Excuse me, with that institution.
All right. Calling for a motion. Do I have a
Move to
motion?
approve.
Do I have a second? Moved by trustee Cortese, seconded by trustee Lay. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Vote, the vote is 4-0 with Manuel Herrera not present. Okay, moving on to 13.04. Dr. Huntoon, this is action for superintendent or designee to award contracts during the summer. This is pretty consistent, right? With
Yes, it's work that may come up during the summer, and because we are taking break basically during July, it allows for those projects to continue.
Right.
Approved by the superintendent or designee to
Right.
award those. They do come back to the board in August for ratification. Just
Got it.
keep things moving.
But it's just making sure that there's no pause on projects that could keep on moving in the summer. Or things that they come up. Okay. No, any public comment on this? No, no hands raised. All right, calling for a motion? Moved by trustee Lay. He beat you to it.
I know he did.
Um. Okay, before we go to that. Okay, so I have a motion by trustee Lay, seconded by trustee Doe. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aboard, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Vote passes. The vote is 4-0 with Manuel Herrera not present. You're almost done, Dr. Huntoon. I'm pretty certain. We're almost there. 13.05, approve contracts for professional services over 25,000.
Yeah, there's many of them on here. And so as we go through the process every year, once the budget is adopted for the next fiscal year, 23-24, then we're bringing contracts that are really for next year. And so this is what.
Second.
This is, you want to finish your sentence?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's just, they're contracts for 23-24 that are those routine items that are coming.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a little eager here. Apologies. So, sorry, moved by trustee Doe, our speed motion maker. Seconded by trustee Cortezi. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The vote is 4-0 with Manuel Herrera not present. Okay, we're going on to section 14, human resources. 14.01, this is action to approve declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Mr. Nguyen?
Thank you. This is a standard item that we do every year, that we have to estimate and report to the CTC how many full-time staff members we need to hire so they can determine their credential issuing processes.
Move for approval.
Okay, there's a motion by trustee Doe, seconded by trustee Lay. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The vote is 4-0 with Manuel Herrera not present. Okay, now we're on to section 15. 15.01, approve the bond capital project contracts over 50,000. Dr. Huntoon,
I'll move to approve.
it's standard. Moved by trustee Cortezi, seconded by trustee Doe. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The vote is 4-0 with Manuel Herrera not present. Okay, now we're coming to consent calendar. So,
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
it's been moved by trustee Cortezi, seconded by trustee Doe. Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? The vote is 4-0 with Manuel Herrera not present. Okay, so that's 16-20. All right, 21 items. We have one item under written reports. But no action is required to receive this for the public record. Okay, so that's item number 21. Section. Somebody gonna say something? No? Okay. Now moving on to 2102. Oh, that's the actual item. Any questions, comments? No, good. Okay, great. 22 is future agenda items. So this is opportunity for Board of Trustees to request any future agenda items.
So we know we've moved a couple,
Yeah.
12.02, 12.03, and 13.01 for next time. And we also know that coming out of our conversation about us starting our conversations around data and how we use it, we'll start to plan that out, as well as the items that we've already identified that you see on the screen.
And also, as you have said earlier, it's not, that should be just one particular position to be under the microscope / magnifying glass. but there should be an overall policies. And I don't mean target any particular positions as much as I want to have this one board member hoping that we would consider when things are of greater magnitude and potential issues, is that we can open that so that we can evaluate how we should move forward and how we should make decisions collectively as a board.
Thank you for that. All right, now we are going on to section number 23. We are on board comments. So let's start with trustee Lay.
Well, I know that we don't have enough time, but I want to say thank you for all stakeholders as well as all administrators, superintendent, all staff, teachers have been worked very hard for these school years and have a good summer. I really want to comment about our student governance board, Lee. We're going to miss you. You're an excellent leader, and we will continue to work and to support all of our students. Thank you.
Trustee Doe.
No additional comment.
Trustee Cortese.
Just thank you to the staff, administration, and all of our education partners for your participation in this process, and have a great summer and see you in the fall.
All of that, and I hope everyone does a little something that brings them joy. Take care of yourselves in the summer before we continue with all the work. Not that there's no work right now, but once we get our kids in that door, it's a different level. Okay. Lee, comments on your end?
I was going to send us an email, but I realized I could just do it here. I just wanted to express my appreciation for Miss Gillen, as well as all of SGB's appreciation, because she works with us a lot to schedule meetings and just to make sure everything that runs smoothly. Not only that, she's also been very friendly to like me specifically, has made my experience here less daunting, just easier, just more comfortable. And I really, really appreciate that.
If there was a comment I want to add, that would be the one I would want to say about Mary. Oh my God, you're fabulous.
Awesome. All right, 23, Glenn.
There was a lot of moving parts tonight, and it extended across our district and extended over time just in terms of preparation. I want to thank the Ed Services team for the work and the commitment that you showed and continually demonstrate about making us better and making sure that we serve our students better. There's times that we said like, hey, we'll disagree at times. We might not always feel like it's we all getting along or not, but I know that we're committed to educational outcomes. And I know that one item alone will not break this district and the relationships that we're going to continue to cultivate. And I just go forward with that understanding. Someone tells me I'm wrong, I'm just going to say, let's keep talking. Because I think we owe it to our community to continue to find ways to get it right. And Eastside does that a lot. And so I want to thank Ed Services for that. I want to thank Business Services for the budget and the care that you go over it with. And Human Resources, we've got some work to do over the summer to make sure that across our system that we're fully staffed and that we've got the adults that are ready to welcome students as they are, find out their areas of strength and areas for growth, so that we can positively respond. And we're going to respond in new ways positively so that our students can be full participants in their classrooms, their schools, and the future full participants in Silicon Valley. Thanks to all the staff across our system that do that every day for our students. And thanks also for the staff and students that are going to meet that goal during their summer study and summer school. Thanks for being about it. Even when others says it's break time, they're saying, nope, it's go time. And that's great. And I can't wait to see what we're going to accomplish together in the fall.
All right. Item number 24, legal counsel. We got anything to report out?
Yes, we do. Closed session, motion by member Cortese, second by member Herrera. The board unanimously approved a settlement agreement and general release with Luz Rivera on behalf of a student, the material terms of which include the payment by the district of up to and not to exceed $104,000 for educational services for a term from June 9th, 2023 through August 31, 2026. And also the payment of attorney's fees in the amount of $11,000. And the agreement contains mutual releases and waivers. And again, that vote was unanimous. There are no other actions to report.
Great. Thank you for that. All right. It is 9:57. This meeting is adjourned.